That one. Oh. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. Welcome to this meeting of the District Council's Community and Environment Committee. I don't think there's anything, well, if there's a fire of some sort, then you need to leave this building where you came in, basically. But we don't expect we don't have fire alarms, do we, for exercise purposes, so I'm hoping we'll be all right. Can I first of all introduce my colleagues at the top table here? To my left is Christy Lynn, and it's Paul Wilson, our Chief Executive, Simon Bainan, and John Ramsey, who looks after everything administrative to do with this meeting. To my right is my Vice Chair. I should have said I'm Martin Burfoot, by the way, Chair of this committee. Nick Whitehead, my Vice Chair. And then Caroline Leatherday. And then to her right is Jason Spencer. And in front of them is Samantha Grisman and Debbie Howman. So, very good. Right, to start the meeting, apologies please. Is that you, John?
Through you, Chair, we've received apologies from Councillor Matt Butler, and their substitute is Councillor Neil Buttle. Councillor Robert Archer, and their substitute is Councillor Peter Dobbs. Councillor Marilyn Franks, and their substitute is Councillor Joe Linthwaite. Councillor Andy Nash, and their substitute is Councillor Simon Ripton, and Councillor Gareth G.
Right. Thank you. I'll find the right page. Well, I think the next item from memory is minutes of the last meeting. Yeah. I can't see the right page, but anyway, I think that's right. So, anyone got any questions on that or any challenges to those minutes? Or would someone like to propose that there are a correct record and we'll vote on that? Yes, Councillor Slack, thank you. Yeah. Seconder? Yeah, Councillor. Everyone, can we have a vote then? Everyone in favour? Right. I think that's pretty well unanimous, those who are here. Apart from the ones who weren't here, of course, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Right, the next item. Lost that as well. Yeah, public participation, of course. I should have known that. We've got a speakers list here, and the first one, well, the two councillors actually, Councillor David Chapman will have 5 minutes to make a statement on weed management. Okay, Dave. Yeah, come forward. Yeah. No, it's it. Yeah. As a member, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Right, good evening everybody. As most people here know, I'm a district councillor on this council, but I'm also a qualified agronomist, and I've been working with glyphosate for around 40 years in industrial or agricultural scale and also horticultural. And what I don't want to do tonight is to come down hard on either side. I want to, excuse me, I'll just set the timer. I want to state some objective views and some scientific impressions on what actually what glyphosate's meant to do, and the reasons why it's probably misunderstood or not scientifically regarded. There is the main problem in the misrepresentation of glyphosate is the body which assesses its, so we call its toxicity. there is a body called the IARC, which is the International Agency for Cancer Research, which is an arm of the World Health Organization, and there are also individual regulatory bodies. The IARC actually measures hazard, right? And the IARC measures what the effect of glyphosate, or the toxicity, the hazard cause of glyphosate is in any conditions. It can be in conditions of extreme exposure, extreme concentration, but if there is some kind of risk by glyphosate or by any material, it is classed as a hazard by IARC. Right, and the hazard is, can this substance cause cancer in theory? The risk part, which is how most countries assess it for their own use, is it likely to cause cancer in real world use at real world exposure levels? It's like saying a kitchen knife is a hazard, and the risk is if it's not used properly, you can cut yourself. So that's and the reason IARC classified glyphosate as a probable carcinogen is because in some laboratory studies, often at very high doses, glyphosate showed effects that could be linked to cancer. And that's where the whole misunderstanding begins. The may possibly, may, could be, could, may possibly. They're all sort of very vague terms. But it's enough for them to flag it as a hazard. And why do regulators reach a different conclusion? UK regulators specifically. Regulators such as the Health and Safety Executive look at risk, not just hazard. And they assess real-world exposure levels, they assess how products are actually used, the safety margins, the environmental behaviour, operator training and controls. And after reviewing the evidence available to them, UK regulators have concluded that glyphosate is used, and this is the key part, this is the methodology of glyphosate usage when used correctly, including in public spaces. What this means for councils is that it tells us to use glyphosate responsibly, quite obviously, but it does not mean glyphosate is unsafe in the way councils use it. That judgment comes from UK regulators who continue to authorise glyphosate for amenity use under strict conditions. Okay, now I just want to give you an example of the IARC classification and how it can be misleading. Commonly used materials which have a higher hazard rating than glyphosate by the IARC are alcohol, that's the ethanol in beverages, everyday use, wine, beer, spirits, diesel engine exhaust, outdoor air pollution and particulate matter, processed meats, everyday use of food, classified due to strong evidence linking processed meats to colorectal cancer, tobacco smoke obviously, hazards, materials with a higher hazard than glyphosate, right? That's the number one in the IRC group. Red meat, classified due to associations again with colorectal cancer. Shift work, including circadian disruption. This is higher hazard than glyphosate. Hot beverages above 65 degrees centigrade, all higher than glyphosate hazard, emissions from high temperature frying, and working as a hairdresser due to long-term exposure to dyes and chemical aerosols. Again, God, is that my 5 minutes?
That's the 5 minutes, Councillor.
So really what I'm saying is we have, if you will bear with me, Chair, for this last bit, we have personnel who are fully trained, who are fully competent in using glyphosate. If they follow the main leadership terms in that use the material as is specified on the bottles, on the cans, and if used with the right PPE and the right methods, then glyphosate does not pose a risk to public use. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Councillor. Next speaker is Councillor Peter O'Brien. You have 5 minutes, as you've gathered, Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Chair and members. It's disappointing that I find myself addressing you here this evening. The decision in 2020, taken unanimously by this committee at the time, to cease the use of glyphosate was probably the most progressive decision taken by the former administration, and was and still is widely supported by our residents. Now, I'm not going to go over the debate as to whether or not glyphosate is carcinogenic or whether it causes health hazards. There is dispute, and none of us is qualified to answer that. But what is indisputable is it's a poison. Our operatives have to wear protective clothing to use it. That tells you that there must be a risk. Why otherwise would operatives have to wear protective clothing if there was no risk? And it's a risk which since 2020 we have not exposed our residents to, who don't wear protective clothing when they pass by where glyphosate has been used. And also what's undeniable is that glyphosate does have a detrimental impact on our ecosystems, on biodiversity, on aquatic life, and on insects and bees in particular. Again, an impact since 2020 we've avoided. Now, you may be told later this evening that it's only proposed to be used in limited circumstances, though whether cemeteries, war memorials, leisure centres, footpaths, the town hall and probably car parks constituted limited is an open question. And to me it's rather like saying that Severn Trent only discharge raw sewage into the River Derwent on 20 days a year, so that means they don't on 345 days, so that's okay. Now, why are you being asked to reintroduce glyphosate? There's not a weed to be seen in Hawleys Park, Bath Gardens or Ashbourne Park, all of which are footpaths and buildings. So we have shown that we don't actually need glyphosate to keep the place clean and tidy. And looking at the issue on a wider scale, when we go to France, where glyphosate is banned in public places, do we come back with an image of a weed-infested country? I don't think we do. Yes, there's been some grumblings from a small number of residents, but there always have been and there always will be, glyphosate or not. So you well may ask, Councillor O'Brien, we do have weeds, so if we don't reintroduce glyphosate, what are you proposing we do instead? Which is a fair question, and I like to be pragmatic. But unfortunately, the recommendation in front of you, recommendation 2, doesn't give you any option other than to say yes or no. If I remind you that very recently you enthusiastically agreed to take £45,000 out of reserves to pay for the promotion of health walks with two new members of staff. Ironic perhaps in itself when you now have a recommendation to spray poison in some of the very places where these walks will take place. I'm sure £45,000 invested in weed management will solve the problem. So what I would recommend that you consider is to ask for the options to cope with this weed growth without the use of glyphosate, to be looked at by officers, perhaps in collaboration with the Biodiversity Working Group, together with the financial implications for these options, and then brought back to this committee for further consideration. This would put the importance of the health of our residents, our commitment to biodiversity, environment and our ecological systems on a par with our commitment to a clean and attractive townscape. I hope you agree with me, colleagues, that this will be a fair and just way forward, which recognises the wide range of issues at stake. Thank you. I'm sorry I can't stay to listen to the debate. It's not because I'm not interested, but I've got another appointment in my ward.
Thank you, Peter. The next speaker is Graham Elliott, a local resident, to make a statement against the Gypsy and Traveller site provision, which is item 8 on the agenda. Oops.
Chair, I wish to object to the proposal to take compulsory purchase action to purchase the proposed traveller site at Watery Lane, Ashbourne, to allocate £25,000 of funding for this and to delegate to a council officer to take compulsory purchase action. £2,000 of the £25,000 is to obtain legal advice on the merits of compulsory purchase action. Surely you should wait until you know whether legal advice confirms such action is advisable before allocating further funds, and for the advice to be discussed in camera by this committee and not left to officers to decide whether to enter into conflict with Derbyshire County Council. There are other options available to you. The Woodyard also has planning consent for a traveller site. The officer's report states that the owners have not come forward, so why not be proactive and actively enter into discussions with them? Their names and addresses, if not held, are held by HM Land Registry, and this information can be accessed by the council's legal department in a matter of minutes and at a cost of just a few pounds. The cost of developing the Woodyard has been previously put forward as a reason for not pursuing this site, but there are millions of pounds of government funding available for the development of traveller sites, which will cover virtually all of these costs, if not all. My research shows no application for these funds has yet been declined. The Woodyard could then also be added to the emerging draft local plan so that there is more than one option and reduce the risk of the local plan failing as a result of the Watery Lane site not being available. You were told in 2017 and again late last year that Derbyshire County Council were unwilling to release the land at Watery Lane. It is wholly inappropriate as a traveller site as it does not comply with government guidance on the siting and development of permanent traveller sites. The noise from the waste site is not appropriate for any residential use, and vehicle fumes from the large number of cars using the site would prohibit it being considered for residential use in any other scenario. The use of the refuse site will increase due to the large number of new homes to be built in Ashbourne, exacerbating this problem further. Hundreds of thousands of pounds have been squandered on sites which this council has failed to deliver. Can you justify a further £25,000 plus when Derbyshire County Council oppose such action on a site which cannot be delivered during the remaining life of this council? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Graham. The next speaker is Janine McCarthy, a local resident, to make a statement, again against the Gypsy and Traveller site provision. So, Janine, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I'm speaking for Middleton residents who are unable to speak tonight themselves. Residents wish to support the District Council's efforts to find a permanent site and wish to also say that it is time to remove Middleton by Wirksworth from the list of potential temporary sites. I would like to speak by way of a real case example about the impact that the uncertainty of having Middleton on a temporary site list is currently having and could continue to have on some residents going forward. Derbyshire Dales District Council's own map attached to previous traveller site documentation shows that there are houses in very close proximity to the proposed temporary site at New Road, Middleton. One villager's house is 54.15 metres from the site. According to HC6 criteria, any traveller's site should not have a significant detrimental impact on neighbouring residential amenity or other land uses. The distance used to establish this is 100 metres, and many of the former proposed sites were excluded from consideration because residential properties were within the 100 metre zone. Why has the same criteria not been applied to Middleton? Not just one home sits within 100 metres, but also 3 of their neighbours. The impact on these properties and families could not be more disastrous for them. The most nearby family have lived in their house all of their life. Their elderly mother is now in a care home, and in order to pay for her continued care, they unfortunately have no alternative but to sell their house. The timing for them could not be worse. When they recently approached an estate agent, they were shocked to be given news that the house had halved in value since the last time it had assessed. They were informed this was a direct result of Middleton being designated as a proposed traveller site, and that the site being quite literally across the yard from their house. The owner has even more alarmed when they were told it was doubtful if the house would actually sell at all. Until Middleton is taken off the list, they feel that they are stuck. These residents think that to some extent it is understandable that no one, including themselves, would want to live near to a site that cannot be landscaped into the environment so that it blends in, and that it will always be visible and audible from their home. Terrace panels, for example, which might be a suitable solution in an urban car park, would not be in this site. They'd be ugly and ineffective in this beautiful rural setting, just as you're entering the village and the Peak Park. This type of fencing would not stand for long due to the exposed nature of the site and doesn't meet with criteria for privacy or the site occupants or landscape within which it is proposed. The families feel that it is unfair to be subjected to such uncertainty, constant worry and financial loss, as we're now approaching 2 years this summer since the Council's proposals were made. Their plea is, please take action to take Middleton off the list of potential sites. Give them a date by which this can happen. Stop the anxiety and uncertainty for them, and continue the reignited and very worthy effort to focus on finding a suitable permanent site. Thank you. Thank you.
Next speaker is Nigel Garbett, a local resident, again to make a statement against the Gypsy and Traveller site provision. Three minutes, Nigel.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed, Chair and Councillors. Thank you for this opportunity to feed back the views of the Parish Council and the villagers of Middleton by Wirksworth. We wish to express support for the District Council in looking to secure a permanent site for Gypsies and Travellers. However, the proposed temporary site in Middleton is and has always been a totally unsuitable location, which should have been withdrawn a long time ago, but has remained on the listing, despite councillors raising concerns and the residents of Middleton explaining why it's totally unsuitable several times at previous meetings. It's no surprise that the residents remain extremely worried by the whole process. The views of the community and the inappropriateness of the site have sadly not been formally recognised by councillors, which is why we feel the need to raise this position again tonight. The Middleton site also fails to meet the needs of the travellers, as set out by the District Council's own criteria and as detailed in the local plan. The travellers have visited the site themselves and are adamant that they will never live in such an inhospitable place. Following the issues that Council had with the planned housing development in Matlock, part of the clear recommendation was to listen to the residents and people with knowledge of a particular situation, and decisions should not be driven solely by the responsibilities of the council. The site is situated 300 metres above sea level. It's above the snow line and exposed in all directions to extreme winds, and with seasonal weather patterns becoming increasingly more unstable, human habitation in a caravan in such an exposed site is inhumane. There are no local amenities, no shops, very sparse and unreliable transport, and there's totally unsafe highway access, including no pavements from the village to the entrance. In addition, the land is known to be contaminated with lead and radon, making the site even more unsuitable. That's notwithstanding the total cost to the taxpayer of transforming a contaminated field with no water, shade, electricity, or safe entrance and exit. The close proximity to nearby homes, the nearest is only 54 metres away, was not accounted for in the original assessment and should also rule this site out of the acceptability criteria. The uncertainty of Middleton remaining as a possible site is having a real tangible effect on the village, resulting in sales of certain properties proving impossible. In summary, we fully understand that Middleton has been left on the list as a residue of the initial recommendations. We see from all of the previous meetings that councillors believe that this site should not be considered. We therefore kindly request that you formalise your beliefs, and we ask that Middleton is completely removed as a potential temporary solution. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John. The next speaker is Councillor Sandra Spencer from Ashbourne Town Council to make a statement again on the Gypsy and Traveller site provision.
Yeah. Chair, committee, good evening. I'll be reiterating what was said last time when I came to this meeting, but with a few differences. Ashbourne Town Council wish to oppose the Watery Lane being considered as a suitable location for a traveller site. The Town Council does not consider this site to be appropriate or acceptable for this purpose. In addition, the Council seeks clarification on several matters of concern arising from recent communications and representations by Derbyshire Dales District Council, particularly in relation to planning policy and statutory duties. Ashbourne Town Council objects to the District Council referring to the wishes of certain families. The planning policy for travellers' sites, PPTS, published by the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, requires local planning authorities to identify a sufficient supply of suitable sites to meet objectively assessed needs. The policy does not support the allocation or provision of sites for specific families. Ashbourne Town Council is therefore concerned that references to the wishes of a certain family are being given weight. Whilst DDDC have a legal obligation under the Housing Act 2004 and the Equality Act of 2010 to assess accommodation needs and to plan positively for the provision of traveller sites, this duty is to provide appropriate sites in general terms, not to secure locations that meet personal circumstances for individual travellers. The Ashbourne Town Council requests that DDDC reinstates a working party to consider alternative and more appropriate sites across the whole of the district in the interests of transparency, collaboration and sound plan making in accordance with the National Planning Policy Framework. This working party should include councillors representing Ashbourne wards. Again, we wish to draw attention to the covenant still affecting Watery Lane, depot on Watery Lane, which restricts the use of the land to non-residential purposes. The existence of this covenant represents a significant legal constraint and raises serious doubts about the deliverability and suitability of the site, as required by national planning policy. This issue remains unresolved, and the Town Council requests clarification as to how the District Council considers this restriction has been overcome and who has been responsible for the cost of this. And to finish, this is personally from me, as a concerned resident, not a councillor. I'd like to say that some of the Ashbourne ward members are not prepared to put their heads above the parapet by supporting Ashbourne in this matter, and that DDDC are dragging their heels by not looking for other sites and are waiting for devolution, then it will be someone else's problem. Other sites within the Derbyshire Dales need to be found. Why should Ashbourne suffer again? Thank you. Thank you.
I should have said before I called Sandra to speak that there was another speaker, John Hewitt, but he's obviously not very well because he did email me to say he may not make it tonight and he's obviously not feeling too well. So anyway, the last speaker, otherwise, is Martin Spencer, local resident, to speak or make a statement on the Gypsy and Traveller site provision.
Good evening. I wish to object to the proposed Traveller site in Ashbourne, not out of prejudice, but out of concern for sound decision making, responsibility, using the public money and the long-term interests of our community. First, the District Council is proposing to spend £25,000 of taxpayers' money pursuing a compulsory purchase order on land that is owned by the County Council. That alone should raise serious questions. We already know the County Council has stated it will challenge any hostile attempt to acquire the land. So before a single pound is spent, this council must ask itself, are we genuinely pursuing a viable solution, or are we embarking on an expensive and unnecessary political battle funded by local residents? At the time when households are under pressure and councils are constantly speaking about limited budget spending £25,000 on legal action that may ultimately fail is extremely difficult to justify. Secondly, there is a covenant on the land which clearly states that it should only be used for expansion of the recycling centre or as an extension to the cemetery. That covenant exists for a reason, with the District Council itself planning to allocate around 60% of housing growth for the Dales to Ashbourne. It is obvious that future infrastructure pressures will increase significantly. More housing means more demand on waste services and inevitably more pressure on cemetery capacity. This land may well be needed for both of the purposes already protected by the covenant. So the question must be asked, why are we pursuing a use that directly conflicts with the restrictions already placed upon the land before establishing whether those restrictions can be removed? Thirdly, the proposed site is known to be prone to flooding. That raises not only practical concerns but humanitarian ones as well. If this council is serious about providing suitable accommodation for travellers, then surely we should not be considering land where flooding risks are negatively affect residents' quality of life, safety and well-being. Placing families on unsuitable land is not suitable or sustainable, responsible solution. Before the council wastes further taxpayers' money, it must first establish two things clearly and beyond doubt. Firstly, whether the covenant can be legally removed, and secondly, whether the County Council is willing to release the land voluntarily. Without those assurances, this proposed risk becomes another costly and embarrassing failure. We should learn from past mistakes, not repeat them. The public expects careful stewardship of public funds, realistic planning and competent governance, not another expensive dispute destined to end in legal wrangling and wasted money. I urge the Council to reconsider this proposal before committing further resources to a deeply flawed process. Thank you very much for the possibility of speaking. Thank you.
While we're still on public participation, you've got in front, or members have in front of them quite a thick document actually of other public participation contributions that have been made from residents in correspondence form. So I don't think I need to outline each one. We'll be here for another hour if I read them all out. So
I'll be here for another 3 hours, Mark.
oh, probably 3 hours. That's right. There are some questions as well received from Vicky Rains, Tansey Parish Council. Question 1, EMCA, that's the East Midlands Combined County Authority growth plan, appears to be focusing on Derbyshire Dales as a visitor economy. It would seem that this economy supports 52,000 jobs. Has the District Council got formal evidence of cooperation with EMCA related to the local plan? The response is yes. EMCA had an initiation meeting to start work on its spatial development strategy in Derby yesterday, in fact, 13th of May. Planning leads from all Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire authorities were invited. The District Council was in attendance. At the meeting, the District Council advised EMCA that the largest employment sector in the Derbyshire Dales is in fact manufacturing, not the visitor economy. And question 2 from Councillor Vicky Rains. The site selection for Tansley in the current local plan is not reflected in the following statement, as an intrinsic green corridor forming part of the local landscape has been submitted as a site to go forward for further assessment. We are trying to emphasise green corridors for tourism, for ecology and landscape character in our local plan process. This needs support from EMCA. The evidence base is 3, Appendix 1. Please explain this statement, as it is not evident that tourism is being protected in Tansley, which has numerous tourist residential sites enabling visitors to visit the Peak Park, thus supporting the local economy. The response is that the site selection was dealt with at the local plan committee last evening, actually, so I have no additional information. Question 3 from Councillor Vicky Rains is, it is noted that the full ARC report is now available for ward members to read. Presumably, ward members will be able to disseminate non-classified information within the report to the first tier of local government, i.e. parish councils. The response to the ARC report has been provided to members in accordance with members' access to information and to council documents as set out in the council's constitution on a confidential basis and must not be shared with parish councils or any third party unless one of the limited exceptions applies, for instance consent. Members must always exercise particular care in handling confidential information to comply with the requirements of the Code of Conduct and to seek advice from the monitoring officer where necessary. Unless and until the ARC report or relevant elements is formally placed in the public domain or appropriate consent is obtained, members should not disseminate its contents to parish councils. Right, that brings to a close public participation for this evening. So the next item is item 4 on the agenda, that's interest. Have any members any interest to declare? No, I don't think so. Right, so the next item is 5, and there's a questions pursuant to Rule of Procedure number 15 to answer questions from members who have given the appropriate notice. I don't think there are any of those actually. We've had 2 statements from councillors, but they weren't questions. So we move on now to item 6 then, which is one of the main items on the agenda, report of the Task and Finish Group and the relationship with East Midlands Combined County Authority on pages 15 to 34. Can I ask, I think it's Jason who's doing this report, that's right. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. In many respects, I'm presenting this report on behalf of the Scrutiny Committee, who, as part of their work programme for the current civic year, agreed to carry out a review of this council's relationship with the East Midlands Combined County Authority. So you'll see in the report before you details of the areas where the Scrutiny Committee felt that there was some overlap in the responsibilities of this council and EMCA, and you can see those bullet pointed in paragraph 2.1 of the report. And because the terms of reference of this committee cover all 4 of those bullet points, this is why the report of the Scrutiny Committee is being brought before you. So the scrutiny exercise was very much a member-led exercise with members of the Scrutiny Committee leading the direction in which that review took place. You'll see in paragraph 2.2 of the report the individual contributions that came forward as part of the investigation by the Task and Finish Group set up by the Scrutiny Committee. And you'll see their findings, the significant issues that they found are set out in paragraph 2.3 of the report. In light of these findings, the Task and Finish Group brought forward 6 recommendations, and as the Scrutiny Committee doesn't have any decision-making powers and can only make recommendations to the relevant decision-making body, these 6 recommendations are the recommendations that have been brought forward to you this evening. You'll see in paragraph 2.5 that officers have considered the recommendations of the Scrutiny Committee, and the view from officers is that it is an accurate reflection of the current situation, and we are supportive of the recommendations that the Scrutiny Committee are proposing. And you'll see also in paragraph 2.6 that in order to sort of maintain the momentum from the scrutiny review, that the Chief Executive has written to the Mayor of the Combined Authority, highlighting the report and the recommendations in there. And a copy of the Chief Executive's letter is attached as Appendix 3. We have had a response from the Mayor, who has given assurances that the authority will respond to the recommendations and the issues raised, and the Mayor has expressed her gratitude for the Council's constructive approach and continued engagement. I've also been in contact with the officer responsible for scrutiny at the Combined Authority, and he has given me assurances that the Combined Authority Scrutiny Committee will also be looking at the report of our Scrutiny Committee and their recommendations. So basically, Chair, the proposal here is that this committee notes the final report and recommendations of the Scrutiny Committee and approve its 6 recommendations set out in A to F in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Right, have any members got questions for Jason Spencer on this particular item? Yeah, Councillor Buttle.
Thank you, Martin. Jason, I'm a bit unsure how this is meant to work. The Scrutiny Committee is not a policy committee, and it's recommending recommendations to a policy committee. So that just seems like there's a wrong way around this. We should be just like, did they note it? Did they recommend it? Did they endorse an officer report? Where did the actual recommendations come from? Who wrote them? And how come they're here as policy, which we're going to improve when we don't seem to have actually been involved as a committee in the creation of policy?
Can you answer that, Jason?
I can, yes. In the Council's constitution, there are the scrutiny procedure rules, and as part of those rules, the scrutiny undertaken by the Scrutiny Committee can take various forms. One of the forms is the pre-scrutiny of items that policy committees or full council intend to make decisions on. It can also do post-decision scrutiny, so it can look at decisions that have been made and review those and identify areas for improvement. And then, of course, the other route is by the Scrutiny Committee setting up its own work programme, identifying topics that they wish to scrutinise, and that forms their work programme for part of the year. So this relationship with the East Midlands Combined Authority was an area that was identified by the Scrutiny Committee. It is a legitimate part of the process that they can undertake these independent reviews and make recommendations on the back of those reviews. At the end of the day, it's up to this committee whether it decides to accept the recommendations. It could accept just some of them or none of them. It's entirely up to this committee.
Thank you for that, Jason. Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions? Yes, Councillor Hobson.
Thank you. It's a pity that Steve Capes isn't here, but perhaps Paul can answer this question. I mean, I think to put in a public report in recognition of the urgent need to improve the relationship, and also further on in the report, there's something about increasing transparency and inclusivity over meetings, but they're just sort of like 2 comments. And have we got any evidence of this as to what this relates to?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Happy to respond to that. Well, they were views which are very much expressed by the members who participated in the scrutiny review, and I think it really comes down to the fact that the District Council doesn't have any formal engagement with the East Midlands Combined County Authority, because we have no representation around the table. So we often find out about information when it appears on published agendas. And I think that's one of the concerns regarding identifying the scope to really influence the work of EMCA, in order that we can actually play a much more proactive role. So the lack of transparency was around the agenda and how EMCA actually work through their policy priorities and strategies. And that very much is reflected in the findings of that scrutiny review.
But are not their agendas and their minutes of their meetings, are they not available to all the members of the, the people like yourself?
Through you, Chair, yes, they are. But by that point in time, clearly a strategy might have already been formulated, a particular course of action has been set upon, and as a district council, the members very much felt like they wanted to be in at the start of that process to influence what that strategy may look like. So rather than be presented with a report which was almost felt to be perhaps a fait accompli, if we was engaged from the outset, there was the feeling that we'd have much better scope to influence what that policy strategy may look like for the Derbyshire Dales. So it was that frustration of not being permanent members, not being around the table because of the governance arrangements that exist, that was really the main source of frustration.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I was on the scrutiny committee. This was very much Councillor Roger Shelley's bee in his bonnet, I suppose, about this. And I think he's uncovered some very significant points, and the recommendations I think we should take heed of, because it's a very frustrating position to be in when we have statements from EMCA about what their spatial strategy is, at a point in time which conflicts with some evidence of our own to the contrary. We are just simply taking limited direction and not having much, as it were, voice at the table. If perhaps, make this a question, could a clarification be, as amongst elected members, exactly who sits on any tables at EMCA? I can think of two. And in terms of officers, who sits on any tables at EMCA, and do any of them have a vote? Thank you, Chair.
Yes, Chair, I can certainly respond to that. In terms of the District Council representation on the EMCA board, there are two elected members representing all Derbyshire districts and boroughs. So that is the leader of High Peak Borough Council and the leader of Chesterfield Borough Council, but district councils are not formal constituent members of that board, so even though they are able to represent the views of district and borough councils, they have very limited voting rights on the board itself. In terms of officers, whilst there are a number of officer working groups that are established and they are increasing, again we have very limited influence and representation at a formal level. So whilst we can input our views and considerations, we don't often see the outcomes of those representations until agendas are published, strategies are being formulated in the final sense, and we are presented with a report on a public agenda.
Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. It's a very difficult situation. We're not represented at the board of EMCA, so therefore we're not really making a great part. So is there room for us to make a statement before the meetings on the agenda? Can we send in our views on the agenda, what's in front of the EMCA board?
Through you, Chair, yes, as with most public meetings of such bodies, there is a public participation opportunity. Perhaps I should say in EMCA's defence, though, that they are clearly responsive to these concerns that are being expressed, and there has been some changes recently introduced through the Strategic Leaders Board, which is attended by the leader of this council. Representation from EMCA has started to attend those particular meetings, and some arrangements are being put in place whereby that could be the vehicle for which district and borough council comments could be fed back into EMCA. So they're certainly not tone deaf to this issue, and they are developing their governance arrangements to try and be more responsive. So I think we need to be reflective of that and be mindful that they are taking steps to try and improve the situation. but the governance arrangements as set down in law do not allow individual district council representation on the board. So it's not MCA's sole responsibility as a constitute of the legislation.
Thank you, Paul.
Councillor Murphy.
Thanks, Chairman. With the changes that are coming in the next few years, with new unitary authorities and whatever, I presume this whole situation will drastically improve with MCA, or am I being naive?
The expectation through you, Chair, is that clearly if local government in Derbyshire goes through unitarisation, be that the creation of one unitary authority or two, that those unitary authorities would sit on the MCA board and have voting rights, yes.
Okay. Yeah, Councillor Wayne.
Thank you. I attended the meeting on the local plan last night, and a number of issues were raised there, particularly in relation to obviously housing and spatial development, and also about growth. I would think the High Peak are very similar to us, but how do we are we regularly feeding into High Peak? Because I think they'll be more of an ally than maybe Chesterfield would be, because they're a similar type of district stroke borough. Are we actually feeding into them and telling them what our views are? Have we got a link, or is that you, Paul? Thank you.
Through you, Chair, there probably isn't a formal mechanism to feed in, other than to share the views through the Strategic Leadership Board that I've just referred to. Clearly, MCA will be assuming strategic planning responsibilities, and there will be formal arrangements put in place as part of that, but those arrangements don't exist yet.
Yeah, obviously that maybe isn't. It's disappointing that they don't, because we're going through the local plan process at the moment, and I think it's vitally important. There's some very good comments made last night about spatial awareness and what have you, and the 6 recommendations stating the blinking obvious to me that we should be doing exactly what they are suggesting. So when it comes to the fact, if we're finished with questions, I'd like to move those recommendations, if that's all right with you, Chair, unless anybody else has got particular views on that. Thank you.
Yes, it's moved then that we accept the recommendations. So will someone second that, please? Yes, Councillor Dobbs.
Yes, I'm happy to second the blinking obvious, to quote my colleague.
Does anyone want to speak on it? Adam, do you want to speak it as a proposer and seconder? Do you want to speak on it?
Second.
You second it.
I'm happy to second, and that was my bit of speaking.
What was it? Oh, right, yes.
Support the blinking obvious.
Councillor Wayne, do you want to say as a proposer?
I think I apologise for saying the word blinking, but at the end of the day, it is a common. It's the minimum we should be expecting from MCA to engage with us or seek ways that we can signpost into them. And I would urge the council to get feeding into. If we can only have High Peak and Chesterfield, we need to be speaking to them and getting them to put our voice forward. It's very disappointing that we don't have a voice there to start with. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you. Councillor Hobson.
Thank you. I agree with everything colleagues have said. What I would like to say on MCA's behalf, speaking as a humble ward member, that Alan Simpson, who's the Sustainable Travel Ambassador, he's been to see me twice through the Mayoral Authority. He's liaised directly with South Darley Parish Council, Winster Parish Council. He came out to Roseley, came on the White Peak Loop. So people are interested in the visitor economy, which is a big MCA sort of priority. So I think it's a new organisation. We've got to move forward and work together. Thank you.
I don't have a question. Can I just speak on this topic? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that's quite helpful. Just to add a bit of context, I don't want this to be seen as councillors feeling that their noses are being put out of joint. I think we're in a unique period of time where we're transitioning from one way of governing to another, and one of the consequences of that, and I'll give you 2 examples. One of the consequences that perhaps residents are feeling a little bit confused about where to go, and I'm certainly picking up some of that feedback. One example is public transport. The Mayor is doing some fantastic stuff on that, but the fact that it has moved from the County Council to EMCA means that whereas before you could go and engage with the County Councillor, perhaps you can't now. So I am certainly picking up some noise on that topic. And then similarly with the overnight visitor levy, I'm not going to debate whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but the tourism industry has certainly reached out to me and expressed some views. And again, the question is, how do I take that into that EMCA authority? That's the problem we're trying to solve. And hopefully this helps our residents and our ward residents find the right people to engage with on these topics.
Can I just come back on that? Obviously, Derbyshire County Council is still responsible for school transport, and I've actually got a very good young lady at the transport. It is helpful. I know it was easy before when you could just ring somebody at Matlock. It's slightly different now, but you know, I think these are teething troubles and they are trying to help.
I can just say, speaking from something I know about, it's the East Bank Track project on the east side of the River Derwent from Matlock southwards. It's obviously seen by the Mayoral Authority as an extension of the White Peak Loop. So those who are involved in this project, it's led by the County Council at the moment, are hopeful that with the encouragement of the Mayor, and apparently she is quite enthusiastic about it, there may be some funding available to try and progress that project, both with feasibility studies and also with obviously a future construction of the route for walking and cycling and so on. So that's the only thing I can think about to say on that subject, but that's the only engagement I've heard about from the EMCA authority and the Mayor particularly with anything in this area. No further contributions then, we can move to a vote. It's been proposed and seconded, so all in favour? I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much, members. Say perhaps. Possibly. And that's weed management. So I call on, in fact, I suppose I want to say something about it to start with, if I can find my notes. Everything's mixed up now. Yeah, I'll listen to Samantha Grisman with her presentation first. I'll probably find my notes after that.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, councillors. This report has come to you following discussions in the Climate Change and Biodiversity Working Group throughout last year and was brought to Scrutiny Committee in February, where the recommendations were agreed and further information was requested and since then been put into the report. The weed management report brings 2 recommendations to you this evening. However, I would like to amend the second recommendation for clarity. The amendment is small, is simply to replace the word footpaths with problematic footpaths as they are known in the report from 3.21. Therefore, the amended recommendation 2 reads that the committee agree to the limited use of glyphosate-based products as the key weed management solution in selective instances across problematic footpaths, closed churchyards, open cemeteries, war memorials and district council owned buildings like the Leisure Centre and the Town Hall. I would also like to take this opportunity to define closed churchyards and open cemeteries, following a few member queries. A closed churchyard refers to a churchyard that has been closed by parish or town council or the church themselves. Legislation then dictates that once closed, the maintenance responsibility is transferred to us as the district council. Open cemeteries refer to the district council-owned cemeteries that currently provide burial plots and services across your district. We have read and noted the correspondence for this report, and I welcome any questions, additional questions from members this evening. Through you, Chair.
Thank you, I found my notes now, so I'm just going to introduce it further. It's obviously a very contentious matter and always likely to divide public opinion, as seen by all councillors given the number of critical emails we've all received over the last couple of weeks. And sadly, a few of these have been somewhat abusive and have misrepresented the facts and proposal for a very limited reintroduction of glyphosate use. Indeed, some communities, for instance, Eam and Grindleford, would be largely unaffected in any case. However, it's clear that most were sent without the benefit of reading the very comprehensive report from our excellent Clean and Green manager, Samantha Grisman. Many also failed to recognise that the Council has a service level agreement with the County Council for weed control on highway land, including roadside footways, in order to comply with a specific standard of weed treatment. I'm afraid people see the word footpaths and they think that applies to everything, but I've always been insistent on roadside footpaths being called footways or pavements, not footpaths. Members need to focus your minds, I think, tonight on the proposal for very limited use of glyphosate herbicide to address specific problematic situations from some footpaths being narrowed by the encroachment of weed growth to the town hall, etc. Where the council doesn't own any land, there will be no change at all. Myself and officers are putting the proposed option to you in recommendation 2, but if you disagree, you're obviously free to vote against and we can find an alternative solution. I personally have an open mind on this. So before we move to a debate, can I ask if anyone's any questions for Samantha? Councillor Buttle.
I think David or... Yeah, I was a bit slow there, but I'll take advantage while I've got it. A while back, the Climate Change and Biodiversity Working Group asked whether there was a possibility to organise volunteers or find some way of getting the community involved in maintaining the spaces that we were finding problematic. I was wondering if there was any detail that came back on that.
Through you, Chair. Yes, from memory, we have about 6 to 8, depending on how sunny it is, outside groups that go out and volunteer to do some of the weed pulling. We then provide bags for them to collect that up, and we'll then go and collect the bags. So we do have community groups that go out and do this kind of work in the same way that a local community pull together for litter picking. However, there are concerns when people are doing that themselves. The manual handling of it, it's quite hard work. And we want to make sure that people are safe, so they do have almost like a risk assessment to kind of go through with us to make sure they're staying safe. But yes, in a short answer to your question, Councillor, sorry, yes, we do have some community groups doing that.
Would it be I'll just finish this one off then. Would it be possible for us to continue doing that? Are we intending to continue doing that?
Yes, we can, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Dobbs.
Thank you, Chair. 3 questions, if you may, if I may, Sam. First of all, just a little clarity about the DCC contract. Is it action defined or outcome defined? In other words, do they tell you you will spray this twice a year, or is it you'll do whatever is necessary to make sure the weeds don't go above 6 feet or whatever?
Let's hope it's not 6 feet, Councillor. Yes, output based. So we had more of a conversation with them the first time this debate came to committee, and County Council don't necessarily dictate what method we use for weed removal. However, they won't increase the amount that we get for weed removal. This committee did have the option to use different trials, different alternatives to glyphosate-based products. But what would happen if the trials were unsuccessful is the highway inspectors that go and inspect these areas monthly would then dictate that glyphosate is used. So it would be, eventually it would become a conversation that they would have with us, that they would like us to use their approved method, which is glyphosate.
Right, quite a tough contract. Second question, I noticed in your report you mentioned that it was always reserved for use on Japanese knotweed, giant hogweed, etc. That has continued in the years since 2020, is that correct?
Yes, that has been continued. Specifically, really, that we have triple SI sites under Natural England, and Natural England also dictate that we use glyphosate-based products in a different way than spraying. We inject on triple SI sites for different reasons, but yes, Natural England do dictate for those sites that we use glyphosate to protect local biodiversity, to cull invasive species. So that was something that the committee did appreciate, that we couldn't ban or restrict it in those areas. So that seems sensible, that if we find those similar species and in amongst verges and parks, that we use the same method.
Thank you very much. My third question is, can you just confirm that there was no way that this council was banning the sale of glyphosate anywhere within our districts? It was still freely available from garden centres?
No, this council didn't ban the sale of glyphosate products in the district.
Is that it, Councillor?
Sorry? That's my 3 questions, yes. I'll have another if you like, but I've had 3.
Councillor Slack next, and then Councillor Lees.
Thank you, Chair. I did support this back in 2020, the banning of it, but I was a bit unsure at the moment. I've had an enormous lot of emails from everyone has had, enormous lot. And it's a very, very difficult question, really, whether, same as David Chapman's one view and Peter O'Brien's another view, it's a very difficult area. But one of the questions I would like to ask, is it same as it's not compulsory to use it? It's not compulsory to use it for county council work. We can drop that, can we? Because we've always used it on county council work, haven't we?
Through you, Chair. So we have, because it's the most effective and efficient way of protecting the highways. So within the SLA, it doesn't state what we use. It's, again, from Councillor Dobbs' question, it's output based. However, if there is an alternative that we're using that isn't presenting the results that we need on the highways to protect our highways, the highway inspectors can then say, you need to go back over and spray. So the concern from the committee with the highways was why we did a trial of a whole area in Eam to kind of demonstrate if we used foam stream or a different alternative, the amount of time that would take and the results that would take. And we did have to go back over it because the results were not satisfactory to the highways inspectors.
Back in my ward in Wordsworth, a lot of residents disagree. They should use it because they weed everywhere. Because it's a big job for the district and weed, isn't it? How many more employees would you have to have if you were hand weeded? All the lot. It's a massive job, isn't it?
At that committee, we didn't get any more members of staff. We did buy a weed ripper, which is a particular manual machine that would push along and it pulls out the weeds. So we didn't get any extra staff at that time. Are you asking, Councillor, if we continued to not use it, how many staff would we need?
How many more staff would you like?
I don't have that information to hand, but I do know that Wirksworth is a particular difficult area with the ditches and kind of in between the housing that those particular machines can't get to. So yes, that would be
just one more question. Which was the most successful way of removing weed? And weed must be the slowest, but what other ways? I saw them using hot foam and different things, burning and so forth. Which is the most successful?
I suppose that's a difficult question for me, Councillor, because we have to just use them more often. So I'm sure foam stream and Nutrivol, if they were used in the way that their manufacturers would encourage us to use them every 4 to 6 weeks, we would perhaps eventually get the same results we would for glyphosate. Hand weeding, we know weeds can grow within 2 or 3 days of being pulled out. So you can kind of an area after 2 weeks, you need to come back. So that's manual weeding every couple of weeks. Like I say, the trials that we had in here, we would just need to use them more often, and I suppose that's the cost that is kind of related to in the trials.
Yeah, thank you.
Please.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I fully support these recommendations that's before us. We've had time now, we've seen all these different trials. None of them have been really successful, quite expensive. So I'm quite supportive of this as well. And we've had some expert advice from Councillor Chapman tonight. He's probably the only one that's possibly qualified to give us this information, and it's much appreciated that Councillor Chapman has come and spoke tonight and enlightened us on the other issues, basically. So I'm fully supportive of this. And Samantha, can you just tell us that, I believe from when we had the biodiversity meetings, the concentrate we use is a weaker strength than what's available on the open market. Is that still the case?
I can't comment on everything that's on the open market, but our ratio is 1 to 80, which is in the report. So it's 80 part water, 1% glyphosate-based product, which is 250 mils per 20-litre knapsack.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Hobson.
Thank you, Chair. I'd also like to thank David Chapman for coming to speak this evening with over 40 years qualified working with this substance, which I don't like to say, can't say it. I'd also like to thank Peter O'Brien for coming and giving the alternative point of view. You know, it is a very emotional, it's a contentious subject. And yes, we've had all these emails that have come in, but I also have complaint after complaint about roads and pavements being, you know, just not effectively managed. It's just going to destroy the roads. But my question is, there's a lot of really interesting people have written in about, you know, biodiversity and pollinators and protecting that, which I think we would all think is really important. You know, we've had this with these small areas through the Derbyshire Dales, which have been left. You know, could we do some more of that? Would that sort of, you know, help people understand more if there were areas that were left to be, you know, to be wild? Is that something that you're thinking of?
Through you, Chair. Thank you. So we currently have 84 sites across the district with over 175 different species. We are currently working with the new climate change and biodiversity team to see if we can expand that. We don't actually own that much land, so we feel we're doing quite a lot at the moment in terms of the areas, but we want to make sure that we're there for the team when they look at the biodiversity net gains. Is that something that actually my teams can take on? At the moment, there isn't any more land that we can look at. What I will say about pollinators, bees, and the things that you've noted and from the complaints is that there are ways that we manage that in application. So the teams would not necessarily use glyphosate or spray in high winds. It's a direct applicator, so it's a very long, kind of thin kind of pencil that's almost used. We're using it with a buffer around waterways. So there's lots of things that we do to reduce that risk, and we'll continue to use it in that way to protect the environment as much as we can.
And would you be asking communities to bring, you know, parish councils, town councils, to bring forward land that they would be interested in putting forward for this use?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, since 2020, we've had community groups. We have lots of active ones. The most recent ones we've had is Ashbourne and Cromford. They've come back to us with some other land. We think they might be private, but if we can support, you know, their efforts on different land, then absolutely. We've got the skills in-house to be able to template it. So, yes, communities are always free to come forward to recommend pieces of land for us.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions? Oh, Councillor Wayne.
Thank you, Chair. Having walked through Bath Gardens at Bakewell, Hawley's Park at Matlock, and on Saturday a very pleasant afternoon in Ashbourne, I thought the parks looked wonderful, and I'd like to applaud what you've been doing without glyphosate. I really would. And I listened to what Councillor Chapman, I've got a question, Chair, but I just want to say that. I listened to what Councillor Chapman said, and he said, you've got one camp saying that it's potentially dangerous and carcinogenic, you've got another that isn't. America has paid, I think, £11 billion out in compensation to date for glyphosate. and it's put another large amount in storage for more claims to come. So, I'll find my questions. I'm catching your disease here, Councillor Burford, but never mind. So what do you think? Do you think that the ban has significantly affected the appearance of the parks?
Through you, Chair. We don't use glyphosate on those 3 particular parks.
No.
Because we have staff there, 2 members of staff there, 37 hours a week. So we don't have that anywhere else. We wouldn't be bringing glyphosate back to those parks because we've been able to manage it, like you say, and I'm sure if any of my team are watching, they'll appreciate your comments on how good they look. They work very hard in those parks, but we don't have that luxury across other play areas, war memorials, closed churchyards, cemeteries. We don't have the staff to do that. I would love to be able to ask you for that, but my chief exec sat behind me. In all seriousness, yes, they do look good because we have staff there 5 days a week doing that.
So basically, but if I may just follow up on that question, so basically we can make a very good job of it without glyphosate.
We can, in particular areas where we have lots of investment into new paths. So the facilities team have actually redone all of those paths in the last 5 years. That's not the same case for closed churchyards. They hold a lot more areas of borders and grassland, which is again a lot easier to pull out weeds from grassland and soil than it is around war memorials or in amongst jitties from houses. So it is an important comment, but it is almost a different type of work that the street cleansing team are doing to the parks team in borders.
So another question. We obviously consider glyphosate as dangerous because we put PPE on our staff, don't we? And I've seen in other areas and in this area that you get the people on the quads coming down here, spraying glyphosate down the road at 8:30 in the morning when children are going to school. Is that safe?
2 questions there, I suppose. The PPE. It is a good question. I put any member of my team that use a chainsaw or anything heavier than 3 kilograms, I put them in PPE. You won't necessarily be doing that at home. So I just want to point out that because my team are wearing PPE doesn't necessarily mean that everybody needs to wear it when they do that work or use those facilities. Using those, we follow the manufacturer's guidelines and in the trainings. Again, that's what we're supposed to do in PPE. But again, you can buy this product in the shop. You and I can go down to a shop and buy a very similar product and not have to do any of that to put it in your garden. So it's a difficult one to explore, really, the elements of PPE. Your second question, sorry, was the quad bikes, 7:30 in the morning. I don't know
it was part of the same thing because they're wearing.
Okay.
They're wearing whatever they wear while they're going around with the wands doing this. And I even saw one go onto the by the telephone kiosk, mount the curb, and there were kids waiting there, and he's spraying around there. To me, that's reckless. But I mean, that isn't. Are they acting on our behalf, or are they acting on the county council's behalf?
I genuinely would need to know the date, the time of the day,
yeah.
and then I would be able to investigate.
But it's just what I've seen.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. I seconded the motion last time, and I've still got significant concerns. What Councillor O'Brien mentioned about it being a quite progressive decision all those years ago, I think it was, and I think it'd be a retrograde step to go back on it now. But that's it for now anyway. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. I've just got a couple of questions as well for you. You don't have to turn around and strain your neck. So obviously we've put this ban in about 6 years ago. And I just 5 years ago, 2020, I read. We're 2026 now. How many complaints, formal complaints, have we had to the council about weeds and pavements? Because I'm not aware in the last sort of reports that we've had the last 2 years that that's come up very high in complaints.
No, and thank you for asking that, Councillor Whitehead, through you, Chair. Service requests and formal complaints are very different at the council. So if a request came through that mowing hadn't been done or weeds needed doing or a bin had been missed, the complaints team at the Derbyshire Dales wouldn't register that as a formal complaint. They would register that as a service request and put it onto our CRM portal to then get actioned. So we've had, from 2020, there was 57. I think in the report I've stated from 2023, there was 37 on the CRM platform. Now, I don't think that accounts for the amount of times it's been mentioned in working group meetings or the emails that we receive from members as well as residents and visitors. So although the question is a valid one, I'm not sure my answer is going to be able to articulate how many correspondence we get in the last 6 years regarding weeds.
I mean, I suppose, really to follow up just on that particular question, I suppose I'd go on my own experience in terms of what residents come and speak to me about. And I can't say this rate, apart from I probably have raised a couple of service requests, maybe about dirty pavements or dusty pavements, and maybe a couple about the kind of wildlife verges. But I don't think I've ever raised a service request about weeds being out of control. And I don't think anyone's ever raised that with me. But yet, I've had a lot of people talk to me about how proud they are as us as a council for not using it for the last 5 years. And I think we can see by the volume of the people who have expressed an opinion for tonight's meeting that there's a strong public opinion out there. Shouldn't we be serving the best interests of our public rather than the ease of use?
Through you, Chair. Yes, as I stated at the beginning in my introduction, this report wasn't brought because we've had an overwhelming amount of complaints about weeds. This report's been brought through from requests from elected members. So I've responded on the request of elected members to bring this report to you in terms of trials, my recommendation in terms of efficiencies, and it is up to the council this evening to make that decision.
So just finish my questions, and then so the question I've been asked most, and it come up in some of these, but I've also been asked by local residents about the reintroduction of this, is on dogs. And I'm a dog lover. I have a Labrador, and I don't like the idea of my Luna walking around, getting on her paws, and then licking it and bringing it back into my house. So, a little bit like Councillor Wayne, the safeguards don't really seem to be there to protect residents and pets in the way that we would want. And I just wonder, kind of, is there any way that you could possibly safeguard that?
The relationship between glyphosate and dogs wasn't something that was brought up in the scope of this report. So if that is something that members would need to consider before moving these recommendations, and that's something we can defer for another meeting if that's an important factor for members.
Okay. And then my last question really is just to pick up another point that you made when you were responding to Councillor Wayne. Councillor made an excellent point about how wonderful our green flag parks are. Why should those parks get preferential treatment compared to parks in my wards or in anyone else's? And I've made this point over and again, not about this issue, but about how certain parts of our district are favoured and we don't sort of invest in the other parts. So I think if it's good enough for Matlock and Ashbourne and Bakewell, then surely it should be good enough for all of our park spaces. So therefore, I would have hoped the question that you would have brought to committee today was not about reintroducing a poison back onto our streets, which was maybe come to ask for more resources so we could do the job properly. Why did we not pose it or frame it in that context for a committee to think about?
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. So when I came into post, there was just one green flag park, and I believe that was Hawleys. So in the time of the 6 years, members have requested that Bakewell get put forward, and then members have requested that Ashbourne get put forward for green flag parks. That's my understanding of that. So if members wish to put any other parks forward for green flag status, that's within their gift.
If there are any more questions, oh, yes, Councillor.
Thank you,
Chair.
Just one more question.
How many other towns and boroughs, like Peak, North East Derbyshire, how many other towns and boroughs have adopted our policy of not using glyphosate?
I only know of one, which is South Derbyshire, that have been experimenting with the different methods like
So
we
just
have
South Derbyshire?
in Derbyshire, yes.
And when it
and we all
becomes
use...
a big unitary authority, it will happen anyway, won't it? Or will they overrule what we've been doing? We don't know that.
No, I don't know that.
at the moment.
No, time will tell, I suppose.
Just something to think about. Yeah, thank you.
And now Councillor Linthwaite.
Thank you, Chair. Sam, can I ask, do we know if glyphosate has been used in, for example, Lovers Walk and other parks within the district?
Since 2020, no. Previously, it might have. It was actually pre me coming into post, but yes, it would have been likely that it was used beforehand.
Thank you. So I'm just thinking in terms of what Councillor Whitehead was saying, that it would reassure him that in his community it hasn't been used in the parks there since the decision was made.
Because it's banned.
Well, it isn't banned, is it? It hasn't been banned. It's just the use of it has been limited. And the second question is, also as a dog owner, is that a question that we could put to Councillor Chapman, as he's still sitting here, if that would be something that he might be able to help us on in terms of, or Councillor Dobbs as our resident chemist.
I do have some data here, actually. The rating for a dog in milligrams per kilogram per day, so an average dog, is 1,000 milligrams toxicity, and that compares with 300 for a rat, and for humans would be, I think, 3,000 milligrams per kilogram per day. I've got this data to illustrate something about the other things that are in glyphosate-based herbicides, which I'll bring up later. But there is data out there, and to be perfectly honest, you have a greater risk if you walk your dog in the winter with salted pavements and don't wash their paws before they wash them for themselves. That is the greater danger, because actually glyphosate is less toxic in those terms than sodium chloride, common salt. That's the pure molecule. I'll come up to those points later.
Can I just ask for a quick bit of clarification on that? Because I was told that when it's sprayed, that's when it's at its most toxic. Are those figures there after it's been sprayed and it's dried, or are they figures that are at the time of spraying? Thank you.
These, I assume, would be derived from laboratory experiments where you have the pure molecule and the adjutants, the extras, together. It wouldn't be spraying on something, but it's important to add that glyphosate is as clever as it is because it has a very relatively short half-life in soil. It degrades fairly quickly, between 2 and 190 days in soil. That's why it's so clever for agriculture, because it basically removes itself when it hits the soil. On hard surfaces, it will probably remain until washed away into something where that degradation process could occur.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Was there another question? No, I think that's it. Yeah. Okay. If there are no more questions, then would somebody like to? Oh, no, Councillor Lees.
Not a question.
Oh, not a question. No.
I'd like to move it, Chair. I'd like to move the recommendations that, with the addition that Samantha's put in about the problematic footpaths. And could we add that another recommendation that whilst spraying in areas where they are spraying, we could put some signage up whilst they are spraying to warn people with dogs, etc.
I think that's a practical.
Through you, Chair. Yes, as part of our risk assessment, we would be doing that.
Right, very good. Right, any further contributions? Okay. Councillor Wayne.
I'd like to, because I still feel strongly about it, and I'd like to move, if it's possible. I mean, if you want to deal with this first, but yeah. I've got an amendment that I would like to put in, please. Thank you.
I need to ask for a seconder for Councillor Stuart Lees's proposal first. Councillor Linthwaite, you want to second that? Right, okay.
Yes, I'd like to second it, thank you.
Very good. Either of you want to speak on that? Councillor Lees?
No, I'm happy with the report, Chair, and I've been on the biodiversity working group, and this has been discussed at great lengths many a time, so happy to move the report, Chair.
Councillor Linthwaite, you want to say anything?
Not really. I think it's a case of it's the limited use, isn't it? I think as long as we do everything within our capacity to,
I know the word
limit
problematic has been inserted as
yes,
well.
yeah. I mean, I spent a lot of countless hours last summer hand digging up dock plants on my own land, and between me and my nephew, I think we cleared about 2 acres by hand. And it looked great, and we were really proud of ourselves because we didn't use glyphosate. Now, yesterday when I was up there, I might as well not have bothered, honestly. So I kind of think like, oh, we tried. So there are places where, with the best will in the world, you just have to get on with it. So thank you.
Well, as Samantha knows as well, when my wife and Councillor Sue, therefore and myself, complained about the weeds around the town hall, Samantha agreed to trial the use of foam stream on the base of all the walls around the town hall here. And I think before that we'd probably done a hand weed ourselves on a Sunday afternoon, but anyway, she thought that foam stream would be more effective, so that was demonstrated to us, and the weeds were gone by the end of that day, but they came back about 2 weeks later. So it's not a conclusive solution, I don't think, in those sorts of circumstances, especially at the base of a wall, between a wall and a hard surface. Right. Councillor Dobbs?
If I may, because I'm going to come to a conclusion that you may be not expecting, because I'm going to start off by talking in support of glyphosate. A lot of the comments where I might agree with the overall direction of travel of the people who've written in, they've actually pulled on evidence which doesn't really support their case at all. And Councillor Chapman made the point about the IARC, International Agency for Research on Cancer. Their way of listing things is highly misleading. He gave some examples of other things that are category 2A, and you can see how it is that this is kind of skewed people's thoughts. And so many comments in emails quoted this information as if this molecule, you just got to touch it, it's a sort of Novichok effect, and that's it. As I pointed out, there are so many things that are actually, in terms of acute toxicity, short-term effect, are more toxic. Vinegar, acetic acid, ethanoic acid is more toxic. Common salt is more toxic. But, and it's a very important but, the additional material which allows the glyphosate to wet the leaves and get absorbed is about 5 times more dangerous, more toxic, potentially carcinogenic, because you can see a sort of mechanism by which that might happen. And therefore, I am actually still concerned that we do not relate this to a specific formulation. A lot of the argument about is glyphosate a problem stem from the fact that Monsanto Bayer have different formulations for it, and they have different surfactants, some of which are more dangerous than others. So I think actually we might be slightly premature if we launch back into this, and I think we should proceed with significant caution. There's quite a good article actually published yesterday by David Randall in Real Clear Science, focusing on exactly this point about how this rating of being probably carcinogenic, by which everybody assumes, oh, that's more than 50% chance of it being carcinogenic. Not at all. That's not how their precautionary principle rating works. So it is worth reading it. I found the whole thing fascinating. I'm a biochemist by training, and I am fascinated by people's perception of risk, and the fact that often we are irrational about perception of risk. And the fact that people were writing in imagining that all that's going to happen is their dog is going to lick some of this residue and that's it, is just simply not true.
we need to be rational about our reaction. But equally, the other half of what a lot of people wrote in about is perfectly valid. And that is, if we don't have dandelions to provide a little bit of early nectar, then we will lose pollinators. And, you know, I think we could proceed from this point with rather more caution than the second suggestion makes. And I don't know if the proposer and seconder would buy into this. I would like to see it being in the confines of those things that are mentioned, being within the gift of the parish council or the town council or the PCC of the church, if relevant, to make the decision as to whether or not they want that sort of control. I don't know how complicated that would be to run, but that does seem to be passing the decision back to the people who are most directly influenced by it. So I'd like to put that forward. Samantha's probably looking very, very askance here and very worried this might be hard to manipulate, in which case, by all means, we can bring it back later. But I think some sensible way forward where we can link it to a specific formulation, where we have some data about the danger from the surfactant might be useful, and then go forward bearing in mind whether the local residents really want it. I mean, I think people need to bear in mind, as I was trying to get out in my questions, your neighbour could have been spraying this stuff willy-nilly thus far, and so to worry about somebody on a quad bike that might go past twice a year does seem to be perhaps not an entirely rational view about it. I think we need to be careful how we go forward. So, sorry about it. Lecture over. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you ever so much, Councillor, for your insight into this problem, professional insight, I should say. Yeah, Councillor Lee.
Yeah, coming back to that, Councillor Dobbs, we did have a situation in Ashbourne, particularly last year. There was members of the public wandering about at night, just before dark, with a knapsack. We don't know what they were spraying, but it certainly killed the weeds. So, you know, we're better having control of what we know, rather than the public taking it in their own hands and do what they want. And I think we've got control of it with Sam's team doing it, rather than it becoming, oh, there's weeds there, let's go out and spray them when it's dark. Just a point.
Samantha and I have seen examples on a local housing estate, shall we say, of residents taking action not on weeds, but on mowing, in fact it was, off their own back. Sorry? Yeah, on biodiversity area as well, that's right, yeah. Yeah, Councillor Ripton.
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank the residents who wrote in as well, however well informed. I mean, it gives me hope that people are still engaging with local government, so we should thank them for that. And thank you for both Councillor O'Brien and Councillor Chapman for talking on this topic. I want to provide an additional perspective. Councillor Chapman, in fact, most of the debate has talked about cancer and toxicity. We've had very little discussion about the broader impact on nature and ecology, in fact, none at all. I attended last night's local plan meeting, and one of the things that gives me comfort is that we have professionals doing technical assessments on which we can rely, and I don't think we have had a technical assessment of the ecological harm that may or may not arise from use of this product or these products. Now, I am not a chemist, I'm an ecological economist, and one of the things that strikes me is that at the end of last year we had the government release a document, a national security assessment, talking about the risk of biodiversity collapse because of the loss of biodiversity, and it is now an imminent threat. And the reason it's an imminent threat is because, and I have read the science as best I can, is because there is still a lot of uncertainty about the use of these products and the interactions of these products. And I think it is the uncertainty that creates the risk. Because we don't have a technical assessment and because we cannot say definitively it is or is not safe, it creates a risk. And we cannot quantify that risk and we cannot qualify that risk. So to make a decision in that context, in the context of what the government is saying about biodiversity collapse, I think is extraordinarily high risk. And then to Peter's point, and other people have alluded to it, what we are very good at doing as a society is trading off nature for things like for money, okay? We say it's cheap, therefore we do it, and we trade off nature. But actually, as we've identified, there are often good cases to say we can create employment, we can create jobs, we can create skilled employment by doing it differently and potentially protect nature. Now, I'm up for that debate, but this report doesn't do it, and it's not a criticism of you, Sam, because you weren't asked to do it, okay? But this report doesn't do it. It presents a binary weeds or chemicals, and it doesn't explore the third way, and it doesn't provide the technical assessment. So if we are going to support it, and I am not, clearly, but if we are going to support it, please consider, I think, that broader context. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Martin. I'm looking forward to hearing what Steve's got to say. No, okay. Well, I thought he was talking about an amendment to option 2 or recommendation 2. We've got a precautionary principle, which I think makes good sense. We've got something which is clearly toxic. And recommendation 2 is closing down our options. It's not, as Simon said, it seems to be an either or option. And I think we could do better than that. I think we need to learn how to not spread toxic products across our environment, particularly in public spaces. Like we've got glyphosate's in our beer, glyphosate is in our bread, like baked goods, they're crammed with it. You go out and have it's just in too many places, and the fact that this doesn't particularly apply to, like making bread, doesn't change the fact that the way we are presenting ourselves to the environment as humans and just trashing it is not healthy. So I'm not comfortable with number 2. I certainly won't be voting for it. There's the complexity of emergent properties from all these chemicals that we're cramming into the systems. We just don't know what's going to happen to us, but we are seeing things just crash and crash. And once they start to crash a lot, we're going to see mass migration, we're going to see death, we're going to see starvation. Okay, this doesn't apply to our cemeteries, but we're a public body. We have to show some leadership. It's just not good enough to say, oh, well, it's going to save us employing somebody. I think we should employ somebody. So I have got an amendment, and I'd like us to further consider the options that we asked for in the Climate Change and Biodiversity Working Group about bringing in the community, finding out who and how we can support people to keep their environment as safe as they can be and to take some leadership on this. So I guess, yes, further consideration. I'd like to change number 2 to include a statement about further consideration to the way we manage town centre, public spaces, yeah. I could probably come up with some words, but if people want to continue making those statements, I'd very much like to be given the option to throw in a recommendation later, which makes number 2 far less prescriptive. I think we need to be thinking about the future.
But presumably you're talking about an addition to the proposed
recommendation. Just like I could possibly come up with a third recommendation, but recommendation 2 is really tight. It's an either or. It's kill or pay, or it's just use the herbicide or don't. But there's no option to how we're going to manage if we don't. And clearly it's been made clear to us that they are finding it difficult to manage because of some complaints. And so I think we need to see what the actual, like we're given the options on what we use industrially, but I'd quite like us to see what other options we can find about employing more people or getting resources in or looking at volunteers. All these different things where we could be taking a bit of leadership for our environment rather than just saying, well, it'll save us employing somebody, which is not good enough from my point of view.
So would you like, Councillor, to come up with some alternative words or additional words while I call Councillor Wayne to speak, for instance?
Yes, well, Councillor Wayne did say he had a recommendation, so it feels rude of me to stand up and try and take his tempo, as it were. So if that's okay, I'd like to come back if that's possible.
That's right, yeah.
Should we be voting on?
Yes, Councillor Wayne.
You can be as rude as you like, Councillor Buckle. But at the end of the day, I've listened to what Councillor Dobbs said, and that was very balanced, and Councillor Ripton as well. I feel that I'm not personally in possession of enough information to overturn something that I think has been very, very good thing for this organisation over the past 5-6 years. I've also read, and I don't know whether anybody can enlighten me on this, but I've also read that there is quite an in-depth study in sometime later this month or in the next couple of months. It's a consultation in relation to glyphosate. I don't know whether it was by HSE, but it's by one of the large organisations. Now, I think it might be foolish to make a decision before we know the result of that. More importantly, I feel that we have just gone and granted a significant amount for the health and well-being of our communities, £45,000, which Councillor O'Brien alluded to, and for walking and walking through our beautiful countryside. Now, I don't, fortunately, have any dock leaves in my garden, Councillor Linthwaite, but I do have dandelions, and I try and embrace them as much as I can until I have to dig them up. But I don't dig them up. No. But at the end of the day, I think I need more information. So my amendment would incorporate the committee tasking officers to do an assessment of the costing of what it costs us for staff, if you know what I mean, over that period. I did draft a bit of something out, but Neil, you mentioned some other things as well that I thought were quite important. So, I mean, my view is it was going to be that the committee agree to task officers to provide costings to engage more staff and equipment to deal with the issues, and on the selected footpaths and areas, close churchyards, memorials, etc., for those areas, because that's where we're on about doing it. So what I would like to see some costings, but I think you'd want to build on that a bit more, Neil, wouldn't you?
Point of order, Chair. Point of order, Chair.
You mean, sorry?
I'm going to raise a point of order.
Can do, yes.
We've had a recommendation for this.
Yes.
And been proposed and seconded. Should we not be voting on the two recommendations before, and see if that passes or fails?
We should be voting on the amendment first, as far as I know.
There's only going to be one amendment.
There's going to be one amendment. I mean, I don't know if someone's going to come up with a decisive amendment. Pardon?
There's only one amendment.
Only one. We'll have one. One at a time, shall we say?
What it is, can I say? Right, I think Samantha mentioned it. If particular areas, if they don't want to have it in that area, they don't have to have it, do they? So could we leave it to town councils in the cemeteries and churchyards and footpaths to decide if they want it in their area?
Well, that could go along with the suggestion about community involvement, couldn't it? I mean, if a community decides it doesn't want
take it more local to different Ashburn works.
That's a separate issue to what.
If they don't want it in their areas, churchyards.
That is a possibility, yes.
It's not, don't use it.
Councillor Wayne, have you come up with a wording yet, an agreed wording with Councillor Bottle?
I've said what I want to say, but if Neil wants to.
I've got Martin, if that's okay.
my
Yes, just whether it incorporates everybody's.
Yeah. In anticipation of this motion being lost, I have prepared an alternative wording, glyphosate-free wording, shall we say. I'll read it out to you anyway. That the committee agree that further consideration is given by officers to changing the council's weed management procedures and operations in order to reduce the incidence and proliferation of weed growth at key council-owned locations, including some problematic footpaths, leisure centres, warming rows and the town hall, and that the financial implications of such changes are reported to a future committee meeting. I don't know how you feel about that. I mean, that's glyphosate-free, that's without glyphosate, I suppose, because I anticipated that probably there'd be quite a number of councillors who wouldn't be in favour of bringing back glyphosate.
I think probably we be sensible if no amendment is coming forward, that we actually vote on the proposal as made, and if that falls, we can formulate an alternative to move forward. So I'm happy to do that.
I do have an amendment.
Sorry?
I do have an amendment.
An amendment?
Yeah, I have an amendment. The one with essentially what you just said is pretty much my amendment.
Oh, right.
I wanted to include a couple of words about asking local churchyards and what have you to consult with the local parish councils.
Yeah.
It's a pretty straightforward thing. You know, like further consideration is taken to work out the resources required to do a better job, rather than just say covering it in glyphosate, which is something I don't think is a good job.
Right.
And that's an amendment to Stuart's original acceptance of the first two of two conditions or two recommendations.
What you're suggesting an amendment to the pro-glyphosate proposal of Stuart Councillor Leese's.
Well, he's making an amendment to the
amendment to that, but I mean, you can't have a glyphosate-free amendment to a glyphosate inclusive proposal.
Your amendment's now been put forward, so if you put forward, that's how they get first and second.
Well, I'll put forward my amendment then, or my amended wording. You want to hear it again?
Chair, if it's any consultation, any help has been proposer of it, I'm happy to include that consultation is taken with parish councils before its use and town councils in their areas.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm happy to put that in.
Yes, I don't know what I stand now.
The amendment's been moved.
Well, my amendments, I've moved my amendment. Is it going to be seconded? There's no second.
Chair, can you just go a bit closer to the microphone and say it again?
Yeah, say it again, I will, yes. That the committee agree that further consideration is given by officers to changing the council's weed management procedures and operations in order to reduce the incidence and proliferation of weed growth at key council-owned locations, including some problematic footpaths, leisure centres, warming rows and the town hall, and that the financial implications of such changes are reported to a future committee meeting. Councillor Wayne.
Can I just confirm that that is an amendment to part 2? You still have one with recommendation 1, but that will be recommendation 2.
That's correct.
Instead of that we are going to use.
That's right.
That's fine. I will second that. Thank you.
Right, so now this moves to debate.
Sorry.
So now
Can I vote on that now?
we can debate.
We need a debate on my amendment.
I think you're saying you're now saying that amendment is to what Councillor Lees is proposing, and therefore it assumes glyphosate continues, but maybe then be subject to local parish and town adjustment.
No, this is a glyphosate-free proposal in a way. It's carrying
but that's then a contradiction to the proposal to use glyphosate.
It is a contradiction to that. Well,
and can't be accepted as an amendment.
Chair, should we vote on the recommendations that's been put forward and seconded?
Possibly that.
And then if that fails, then you go to your second amendment.
Well, if you want to do that, members, then we'll do that. We'll vote on that to start with. On the
why can't the amendment change the
no amendment
as written with the words problematic footpaths and usage of signage when it is being used in public places.
If an amendment's been first and seconded, then it should be voted on the
That's what I
amendment,
thought, yes.
debated and amended. If you look at the
is
sheet
it-
on your tables, it explains how the process works.
But Councillor Lees maintains that it negates the original proposal
It's
as he's put forward.
irrelevant. It's irrelevant.
Well, I think that's irrelevant, yes. So do you want to have a vote on my amendment to start with then? And if that's lost, then you go back to the substantive motion that Councillor Lees proposed some time ago. You want to vote on that then, on my...
Should we just make sure
My
we've got
amendment.
full clarity first? Because Bob's looking very confused. There's a look of quite a few confused faces. So should we just take a couple of minutes so we've got real clarity? Because we don't want to accidentally vote something through that none of us want or only some of us want.
No.
So let's just take a second so we're absolutely sure what we're talking about. So I think where we are, if Martin's and mind me just saying where I think we are.
Yeah.
So Stuart has done his proposal.
He has.
Martin is amending the second recommendation of that.
Yeah.
So he's absolutely able to put something contrary in his amendment to the substantive motion. Yeah, he is. We've just checked it.
But then amendments be moved and seconded.
And we do it all the time. I've been in so many meetings where we bring amendments that don't say the same as what the original proposal was. So,
I mean, it's similar in terms of the results because it's dealing with weed control measures, but without mentioning specifically the return of glyphosate. So, do you want to vote on this amendment first then?
Can we speak to it?
Pardon?
Can I speak to it?
You can, yes.
Thank you. I think there's a horrible noise of a can clanking down the road here, if we're not careful.
Yes.
I think there probably is enough common ground if we can get the right form of words. Should we make some progress by just voting on recommendation 1 for the moment, get that out of the way, and then move on to a better form of 2, potentially? Would that be helpful?
All those in favour of recommendation 1 then?
Well, hang on. Is that... That's not being proposed. I had to ask Stuart if I have his permission just to vote on the first part. Would he be happy in the second for that, to do that, to take them separately?
Yes, Chair.
All those in favour of recommendation 1? I think that looks unanimous. That's progress. Right. So where do we stand now? We need to obviously decide what we're going to do about recommendation 2. I mean, my amendment should be debated now. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Through you, Chair. Actually, we're looking at the Constitution. We're not able to have an amendment which negates the first amendment. So, yeah, so my apologies.
That's fair enough. Okay.
Sometimes they jump
Right.
on the amendment.
Yeah, Councillor Butler.
May I? I'm sure it's not going to be very helpful.
Oh dear.
Are we?
Helpful suggestions.
Are we not asking for further detail and reports before the second recommendation is brought back to another community environment in the wording by further considerations given to changes and a report is brought back to council to inform us about the options on a work stream to actually step into reducing and managing this selective use on war memorials, etc. That's what we're saying here with with that amendment that you just quoted, Martin, which Steve was very happy to second. So it's not changing anything apart from it's wanting further detail. It's an expansion. It's not saying this is an end thing. It's saying come back with more info because we need more info.
My amendment doesn't mention glyphosate, so it's
It doesn't, no.
No.
But it doesn't need to because it's actually just asking for an update on this report that actually gives us options.
Chair, if I could bring some clarity to what I've heard. So we've got some recommendations in the report which have been moved and seconded. Members have then spoken at various points regarding different amendments, and as the as Christie's pointed out, you cannot, by way of amendment, propose a negative to the original motion. However, the point that Councillor Buttle has just raised, which is effectively seeking a deferral for specified reasons to come back with further information, that would be a legitimate amendment. But you cannot propose the original not to use glyphosate as an amendment to something that's positively saying in the recommendation to use glyphosate. So members just need to be clear what the purpose of the amendment is and what you're seeking to achieve.
Yes. Yeah. Councillor Butler again.
I think I'm seeking to achieve exactly what Paul just said.
Right.
We just get more info, come back with a more detailed report about our options. That's all we're asking for. There's further consideration to be brought back in a report to C&E.
Yeah. Councillor Lees.
Chair, I'd like to move this so we vote on recommendation 2 as it stands, as the proposer, and hopefully Joe as the seconder will agree. We should vote on the recommendations that have been put before. If that fails, then it either comes back or you do whatever. But we should vote on what we've agreed, what we've proposed and seconded. We shouldn't be adding bits in and out and whatever. We should be voting on what's in front of us. If that fails, we then go back to the drawing board and it comes back to this meeting again. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, the proposer and a seconder. Are you, Councillor Lynn, quite happy with that?
May I ask for a recorded vote on this, please?
Sorry?
May I ask for a recorded vote on this, please?
You do, yes.
So I would have to second that.
A seconder for that? Yes, Councillor Whitehead. Right. Okay, so all those in favour of the... Sorry? Well, sorry, yes, recorded vote, yes, on the original, but with the insertion of the word problematic footpath as opposed to just footpath. Yeah, right. Okay.
So the recorded vote, Councillor Burfoot. Martin.
Against.
Councillor Butcher. Councillor Bottle.
Against.
Councillor Dobbs. Against. Councillor Hobson. Councillor Lees.
For.
Councillor Linthwaite.
4.
Councillor Murphy.
For.
Councillor Ripton.
Against.
Councillor Slack.
Against.
Councillor Wayne.
Against.
And Councillor Whitehead.
Against.
And the result is?
7-5.
Yeah, 7 in favour.
7 or 5 for and 7 against, is that correct?
5 for, 7 against.
Yeah, right. So would you like to, I was anticipating that sort of result, I suppose, when I proposed drafted my amended resolution. So do you want to vote on that now, or do you want to add to it?
Point of order, though, sorry.
Okay.
Once we've struck down something,
yeah.
I don't think we could then add something back in, could we?
We've
finished the vote, we've voted, so we can't do anything.
Is that a fact?
Well, the
Can
vote's
we?
been voted down.
Yeah.
So
Because it becomes a new substantive motion, and that's not on the paper. And so I thought that I've never seen that happen in another meeting.
Yeah,
so the only resolution is number 1 then, of the recommendations. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Are you sure we can't put an extra a new motion at this point in the middle of the...
That's why you have to do amendments on what's proposed. You can't amend
can't
it after we've
negate.
voted it down.
No, it's not an amendment, but a new motion.
A new motion can be moved to start again.
It can be a new motion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Following the procedure,
Yeah.
a new motion can be
new
started.
motion can be moved to start again. Yeah.
At a future meeting. Not
Start
now.
again at a future meeting or a current one.
Give me 2 minutes, let me look at the constitution.
Yeah, Councillor Wayne.
There are obviously certain members and members of the community who have an issue with weeds. I think that was too prescriptive, and I don't want to see the use of glyphosate again. But to be fair, open and transparent, if that's what we want, we could seek more clarity. I don't want to make work for officers. This is the whole issue. I'm happy just to let it go that it's failed and we carry on for another year or 2 years, and that's that. My main concerns were the fact that there is it's my understanding that there's going to be a consultation in relation to glyphosate in the next month or two, and I need more information about the costings. Now, if we want to bring another paper in a couple of 3 months, then that's absolutely fine with me, and we'll review it with a little bit more detail, like Councillor Ripton said. There's an environmental and an ecological issue as well that we haven't really touched upon, which we should be doing, because it's not just about, you know, Councillor Dobbs, I wouldn't have been overly concerned if there was just me down there when this person came round with this one, but there were school children there. And so at the end of the day, I've got some concerns. So I would like to see in a few months' time, if that's possible. I don't want to make work for you. You know, I don't want to at all. But I just think to give it a fair clout. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Bring it back to probably the next meeting or a future meeting. And the next meeting I think is in July, is it not, Samantha?
That's too soon. It doesn't give us sufficient.
Right?
It don't give us
Is that enough time? Enough time. But it have to be beyond that then, won't it? A future meeting, as I proposed in my amendment. That's right. Yeah. Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. The consultation, we could consult all the town councils and the parish council for their views on it, if they wanted to be used in their area at all, if we have any consultation.
Well, I suppose they can be consulted directly, I guess. Yeah. I don't know how often that's done by officers in terms of every parish in the...
It can be a consideration if members want to. It can be a consideration if members wanted to introduce consultation as part of the review, and
that
at a
can
later date to bring back to it, that can be included.
Yeah, that can be included as part of the review, consultation with parish and town councils. So.
Chair, just to clarify, do we need to pass a motion to direct officers in this particular way, or can it just be taken as read that it's going to come back with some more information, particularly on my point about the formulations making a difference, but also I really like the idea of parishes, the people directly involved, making a statement. I believe this was done in 2020, 2023, I saw it in the report, and clearly different areas have different feelings about it, and I think those need to be factored in. Yeah. So it's not a sort of one-size-fits-all for the entire Dales. And I think it's good that people do have a chance to express an opinion. And I think we do need a bit more information. As I say, I don't like the idea of glyphosate being regarded as something dreadfully toxic. It's not. It's probably the most clever piece of herbicide molecular engineering in a century. But, and it's a big but, we need to use it carefully. And we haven't even touched on what happens if it gets into watercourses.
So Samantha and Debbie, are you happy to go forward informally with a further review and yeah, right, yes, yes, Debbie.
If members are minded, could they speak to their climate and biodiversity representative, because this was considered by that group in January, and the options for reinstating glyphosate was discussed in January, and it was in the minutes from that scrutiny meeting as well, that it was going to be in this report before you today. So there's obviously been a change, which is fine, but if you could all please speak to your representatives on that working group so that we can relook at how we do this piece of work for Sam to help her. You know, it's took a considerable amount of time to get to the point we're at today. So if we are changing that scope and that remit, please report that in. Thank you.
So does that mean, Debbie, that a report will be submitted to the Climate Change and Biodiversity Working Group, or it will just be discussed informally?
I think we can. The next meeting's in June, at the end of June. So I think if people can come back with a scope, so that we can discuss it as the working group, and then Sam's got a clear steer on the direction of travel, and then obviously the next report will come to you later on in the year.
Right. Are members reasonably happy with that then? Okay. So we've got we've passed recommendation 1, so that's what goes forward into the minutes, presumably. Is that okay? Right. Can we move on to the next item then, which is possibly more controversial, I don't know, but I suppose we've discussed it so many times, but we can keep it fairly short, can't we? Right, thanks, Samantha.
Thanks, sir.
Right. Right, this is Gypsy and Traveller site provision. I think Simon's been waiting very patiently to present this report, so Simon, would you like to go ahead?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this report builds on previous reports brought to this committee and sets out how the Council has attempted to secure permanent Gypsy and Traveller sites since 2012. This report details the extensive work undertaken to date and highlights the significant barriers encountered. The provision of a permanent site is a corporate plan priority due to the Council's legal obligations, local plan requirement, the ongoing impact on local communities and the need to resolve long-term uncertainty. The report outlines the Council's legal duties, including the requirement to provide culturally appropriate accommodation for homelessness, gypsies and travellers. The report sets out recommendations including support to seek advice on the compulsory purchase of Waterloo Lane Ashbourne. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. What dialogue have you had with Derbyshire County Council in relation to acquiring this land?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Councillor Upton, yeah, we sent 2 letters and had communication directly with them in respect of this particular piece of land, and that's, again, I think it's detailed in the report here, and those letters have been circulated.
So the fact that they're not keen on this, why do you think a further approach would be different?
If I may respond to that, Chair. Clearly, any decision to embark upon compulsory purchase is a very significant decision to take. So the recommendation to basically seek agreement to contacting the County Council one further time is to give them an opportunity to reflect upon any intent that's shown by this council to move it forward more formally, and clearly avoid further expenditure of public monies should they choose to change their position. So it's the final contact, if you like, before, should council agree it, initiating formal proceedings, because so far the communications have not delivered a positive result.
Thank you, Chair. Could you just clarify, it's matters arising from what Councillor Martin Spencer made. Could you confirm that the 2017 site is in fact not in a flood zone and that there is no covenant on it?
Through you, Chair, both of those points are correct. It's not in a flood zone and there is no covenant on that part of the site.
If I may, a follow-up. In terms of the costing, a point was made about the sums of money for compulsory purchase. Would I be right in saying that most of the sites that we've even considered elsewhere have got 6 noughts, and this one has rather fewer?
Okay. Follow up, Simon.
That is correct, Chair, yes.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions. Councillor Spencer mentioned about taking the individual needs of individual traveller families into account when allocating sites or looking for sites and what might be suitable and what might not be. I wonder if you could just clarify that for us in terms of whether we are able to do that or not.
Through you, Chair. There's been a number of assessments in relation to traveller families, and again there was the county's whole look at the number of traveller families, and the numbers basically identified within any report that's come out of that basically refers to the families that are currently occupying in our area. So although it would be great to think that we don't have to take into consideration one particular family. The numbers that have come out in terms of the travellers within our area that we need to accommodate are those families that are currently occupying in our area. So it's either and or, basically. So us looking for sites basically means that we need to look for the sites of the people that currently are in our area that need accommodation. So either and, we've got to look for sites and deal with the families that we've got currently within our area to sort those issues out.
Thank you. So really, that's exactly the same as it would be for any other family. If it were a settled family that was in need of accommodation, we would need to take their individual needs into account as well in terms of where we would be looking to put them in housing.
Through you, Chair, in exactly the same way as we look for affordable housing, we look at local needs and demonstrate the numbers within those communities and try and provide accommodation for those within those communities. This would be exactly the same priority and same order we would look at.
And I do have a second question, if that's all right, Chair. Regarding compulsory purchase orders, that's not the clue in the name, really. That you're bound, if you're using or approaching using compulsory purchase order, then you're doing it with somebody who's not willing to sell, which is something that happens all the time, whether it's HS2 or bypasses or reservoirs, in our case. So, am I right? That's kind of like the clues in the name.
Through you, Chair, absolutely right. And I think one needs to reflect upon the efforts that this council has gone to for many years in terms of trying to demonstrate that this site is a site that deserves serious consideration. It's a site that went through a local plan examination. It's been it's been accepted by a local plan inspector. It's been previously granted planning permission, and there is no other better site which has come forward over the many years that we've been looking for a site. So clearly, if you were to embark upon any compulsory purchase procedures, that process in itself requires independent examination. So if this site wasn't appropriate for whatever reason, then clearly that action would fail. But this council, as the report demonstrates, has taken very significant measures and efforts over many, many years, over 3 administrations to try and solve this, and we've not solved it yet.
So it was just a quick question. Again, we had some wonderful speakers talking very passionately for their local areas. One of them mentioned that there was significant national government funding to support our work, and I was not really aware of that in terms of all the conversations we've had, because it's always been a question of us trying to fund this ourselves. So I just wondered whether we have any information on that, that we could just kind of make sure that we've got the correct picture.
Through you, Chair, yes, certainly. The funding that is available is the affordable housing funding, basically the 39 billion that is there to support all affordable housing. There was previously pots of money for specific traveller sites, etc., but this has now been encompassed within the Homes England grant funding. So again, we as part of the affordable housing work that we're doing at the moment, we've got meetings coming up with Homes England, and we'll explore those costs as part of that. So that's where that funding comes from. But again, one of those questions will be to ask for examples of where that funding has been used for other traveller sites as well, and sort of the numbers that are going to come out of that.
If I can just add to that, Simon, what scale of funding would be available for this particular purpose from the government, do you think? Because I don't know how it compares to affordable housing funding or anything else, or for local authorities' needs in that respect, but in terms of travellers and gypsies, what sort of scale is it, and is there a maximum grant available, or does it require match funding of a certain percentage or whatever?
Through you, Chair, yeah, as just responded to Councillor White, that's unknown at the moment until we've had those conversations with Homes England. We've got a meeting with Homes England next Monday. This is obviously a fund that was introduced from this year, 2026, so there may not have been any traveller sites funded through this, so that's questions that we've got to ask directly to Homes England.
We could pilot it for
Thank you, Chair. Compulsory purchase. Why aren't we making efforts to compulsory purchase the Holmesford site, which is the only site that this authority has actually given planning permission to. And my second question is, with this, with the local plan, needs for the local plan, is this not the time now to remove all our car parks, etc., and land that we own that's not suitable for travellers out of the equation altogether, like the ones at Middleton, any other car parks that we own and we've discontinued already, Matlock, Bath, Ashbourne, should they not be removed out of this equation altogether now, because we've got that ideal time now to remove them and look properly?
That's a good point, Councillor. I don't know how Paul or Simon would respond to that. It's certainly a point well made. Any?
Well, through you, Chairman, clearly these are member decisions. The reasons why those sites were identified in the first place was because it came through member decisions. So this report effectively seeks to put in front of members a pretty clear and comprehensive history of the various efforts that we've undertaken over the last 13 years to try and deal with this issue. In regard to the Holmesford site, there is a detailed chronology at the back of the report which explains in great detail the efforts that this council has been to, and it's through decisions of this council to cease further pursuing the Holmesford site is the reason why it's not being pursued. So members need to determine what course of action they want to pursue, and that's the real reason why this report has been brought forward.
You come back, Chair. Yeah, I mean, if we're talking of three-figure numbers, like Councillor Dobbs referred to, we could be up to that sort of figure in legal costs with making a compulsory purchase that we may not get. So I think, why don't we invest money and we know something that's got planning permission on and move forward? And these car parks and pieces of land we've looked at have been to, when the Gypsy Traveller working group was up and running, they was all discounted as not being suitable. So why do they keep coming back? Why we should be removed once and for all. Thank you.
Peter? Councillor Slack.
Yeah. Sorry, thank you, Chair. The different sites. First of all, the site at Ashbourne, Watery Lane, it was passed many years ago, and it was agreed, and the change of administration at the council, changed from one party to another, and the other party took it away. So it has been put down to be a site properly originally, and the planning was passed. So that's a separate issue. But the site at Middleton, the site at Matlock Bath, are sites which are worth people. They shouldn't be in the list at all. Matlock Bath, they should never be in the list with all the coach parks being taken over. And Middleton's, well, it's impossible really. It's uneconomical and it's a hostile position, and it won't achieve anything. So that's them two sites are separate. The one at Watery Lane that has been passed for by planning, but it's just a change of administration at County Hall, and the other administration chucked it out. So
Councillor Hobson and Councillor Murphy.
Thank you. I think it's Councillor Lee's question I want to ask. It's not my question about will the local plan fail without this site?
Happy to answer that, Chair. I don't think anybody can say definitively, because clearly that will be dependent upon the evidence that the council brings forward to the local plan inquiry and the views of the inspector. However, what we do know is that we do have a proven need for the provision of traveller sites, because that comes through the evidence base. And we also know that we're currently not identifying a sufficient quantum of sites to meet that need. So the challenge for the council, in exactly the same way it is for conventional housing, is that you have to demonstrate that you've pursued all possible means to meet that proven need, and if you don't, as you are with conventional housing, you are at risk. It comes down to the evidence and demonstrated, and that's why this report talks about taking the very serious consideration of CPO, because we've tried pretty much everything else, but we've never tried or even considered CPO, so that's the reason why that option is now put on the table.
Thank you. And my second question is, I feel very uncomfortable with bringing a report through when you you've asked a couple of times and not had an answer. You know, we can say we don't think that they would agree, but to just come through with a report without any proper sort of, you know, we'd like to see something on the table from the county council tonight. We're saying we're going to, justify spending this money. And as Graham Elliott said, you know, should we not have spent £2,000, which I'm sure out of your delegated money, you could have done that and found out before you brought this report?
Through you, Chair, with respect, we have found out, because I've written twice to the County Council. I've had a letter from the leader of the County Council saying no. I've got countless emails from the County Council saying no. Myself and the leader of the council have sat in the office of the leader of the County Council and he said no. I'm not sure what else I can do other than perhaps try one final time and say, well, we're going to consider another alternative course of action if we're not able to try and reach an agreement. That's really what this report is trying to bring about.
Thank you. And my final question is, you know, I agree with other councillors, you know, the people that have spoken tonight, I feel really sorry for those people from Middleton who came a few months ago and said what anxiety and stress that they were suffering. You know, can we tonight, as Councillor Lee says, take those sites off, take Matlock Bath off, take Middleton off, finally, and do that? And can we be proactive and get in touch with those woodyard owners and do that? This is a site with planning permission. We've heard all this, they haven't got this on site, they haven't got that on site. I have seen no evidence of that, of what is on that site. We've been told this as councillors, there's never been a site visit. So can this council be, but not with the owners? Yes, but not. You know, they disagree with what you've said. You know, there are no, they disagree. But you should be contacting those people, I think, this council, and ditching these sites. Yes, I know the report. I want to bring it out because I don't think, you know, Mr. Yap isn't here tonight to say his piece. He comes, doesn't he, to say. Yeah.
Councillor Murphy. If you can remember your question.
Well, it's not that. Some of it's been already asked, but I'm just wondering, I mean, obviously, this has all been driven by the local plan. We need to have a site to put into the local plan and present that. Sorry? No, I appreciate that. But how practical is it to actually, you know, put a site into our presentation in December 26 to the inspectors that we don't know we've got any prospect of actually ever having? And, you know, from what I've read today, compulsory purchase orders process, it can take a long, long time. Are we allowed to put a site in it which is so up in the air and so sort of uncontrollable? I listened to Peter's point there about a change of administration and taking it away. But the thing is, the change of administration, they wanted to use that site as part of the potential for the bypass.
Never ago, never happened. Never will.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's the reason. It wasn't just ideology, you know.
Never happened.
So, what? I've asked you a question. That's it then.
So, are we allowed to put a site like this Watery Lane into the local plan, presentation to the inspectors, with it being so sort of... Because when you think about the housing sites that we're going to put in the plan, those are being presented to us by landowners, developers or whatever to be included in the plan. We don't have the same sort of mandate to do that with this particular site for travellers.
Yes, Paul.
To you, Chair, I think the answer to that question is we did exactly the same in the 2017 local plan, because we clearly didn't own the site. We had some discussions with the County Council, but we was able to reach a sufficient level of agreement to demonstrate to the inspector that there was a realistic prospect that the site could be brought forward. And that's the same test we'd have to try and meet this time round. Clearly it may be more challenging if the County Council were to object to that proposal through the local plan consultation, which they probably would do. But it comes back to that same point of evidence and trying to prove that you've left no stone unturned, as one inspector recently said to us, in demonstrating that you've tried your hardest to try and meet the need. But it could succeed, but it could equally fail. There's no guarantee.
Before I call the next question, can someone propose that we extend the meeting for another half an hour maximum? Councillor Lees, Councillor Slack. Thank you. All in favour? Right. Who's next? Was it you, Councillor Lynn, to wait for the next question? Oh, right. Who was it? Councillor Lees, yes.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to 2015, if you like, when these we got this duty to with the homelessness and etc. We was looking at 4 people then. Has that now progressed to say 14, or how many is it now? What is the obligation now that we've got to, that we've got to house or home, whatever?
Through you, Chair, yeah. The numbers in terms of the assessment that was done is in paragraph 3.1 of your report, which is 11 pictures that we would have to provide as part of the information that we've been provided with.
So are all those people that would occupy those 11 people relations, or are they homeless people from within the community? Because, it's just escalate. Where does it stop? Before we know, we'll want a campsite. Before we finish, not a piece of land.
Well, I think we're getting into the realms of trying to unpick the evidence for the local plan. But the Gypsy and Traveller assessment, it doesn't necessarily talk about particular individuals, but it looks at trends. It looks at the frequency of travellers within the Derbyshire Dales, be it families that are well known to us at the moment or other families. So it's quite a generic assessment of what the quantum of pitch requirements would be, but it is based upon robust evidence as contained within that assessment. So I don't think we can talk about individual families. I think we need to think about what that evidence says by way of pitch requirements.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to propose we move this. I think it's extraordinarily clear, and the recommendations are extraordinarily clear. And I think Paul's made a very good case in terms of the chronology being explained and the amount of effort and work that has gone into this. So I'd like to propose we move this.
Councillor Slack.
I'm not prepared. I'd agree with it, but just the two that matter about Middleton to be taken.
Well,
Is someone prepared to second?
It's a traveller's report, so you could make that, surely, Peter. I'll make it.
Is there someone prepared to second Councillor Ripton's proposal? Yeah, Councillor Butcher. Do you want to move to a vote then?
I'd like to amend it.
You're going to have an amendment on it? Is it going to be an amendment?
I can propose it if you want, Peter. So I would just like to add a recommendation, and the recommendation that I'm adding is with the wish of the committee that we remove Matlock, Bath and Middleton from future discussions linked to travellers.
Has someone seconded that? You are. Is there any advice from officers about that, the implications of that, Paul or Simon?
Whether it's pertinent to
What?
Yeah.
I suppose you're asking a question about whether it's a viable. Does it negate what's proposed in the recommendations?
It's relevant from it being a traveller's report.
Yeah.
Through your chair.
Yes.
I believe that the amendment suggested is not pertinent to the report. It's quite a separate issue entirely. So I don't advise that the recommendation be added.
Right.
So could you give a rationale for that, Christy? Because it's a report about travellers and the amendment is specifically about travellers. So what's your rationale?
Yeah.
That it's not, it doesn't pertain to travellers.
The Constitution is very clear at 18.7 that any amendment must be pertinent and relevant to the original motion and shall not have the effect of introducing a material new issue. This issue, the report, doesn't address sites as such, it's the specific recommendations.
I'm not changing the recommendations, I'm adding a recommendation, which is about travellers. So I disagree.
Who's got a definitive answer to that? Are we permitted
If I was
to...
changing one of the recommendations and adding Matlock Baffin, absolutely would agree. But I'm not doing that. I'm adding. And we've been in many meetings where we've added recommendations to other motions, but because this is a bit sticky, and because you don't want to make a decision on it, we're finding a reason not to vote on it. I find that appalling, actually.
Councillor Ripton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't disagree with Nick's desire to address these other sites. I think that's really, really important. I guess the question is, does this report relate specifically to the acquisition of a permanent site? And effectively what you're talking about, Nick, is temporary sites. But can we take the permanent site question, but also give Nick and others comfort that we need to find a mechanism to address those other sites? Because I do agree that it needs some attention.
Yes, Councillor.
If we're just talking about permanent sites, why is Matlock Bath and Middleton in this report?
They're not
in the report.
It's not in the reference to them, but
it's a descriptive report. It's not.
They're not included in the recommendations,
A
are they?
recommendation, is it?
Chair, through you, I think as the co-author of this report, the key purpose of this was not to deal with the issue of permanent or temporary traveller site provision. Pretty much every other report that was brought through this committee has dealt with it in that particular context. This report is effectively providing an update on the initiatives and activities that have taken place historically in order to try and provide for Gypsy and Traveller provision, but it's leaning more towards progressing the local plan and how we go about identifying a site to meet the proving need that exists within the local plan and identifying a way in which we can actually move forward to that. There are many other site considerations relating to Gypsies and Travellers, such as the temporary sites that we've got in Matlock Bath, at Mayfield Road in Ashbourne. Other than the reference to those being part of the chronology of this whole story, this report is quite specific in terms of what it's trying to achieve. It's not dealing with how we manage temporary or permanent traveller site provision across the districts. And I think that is the materiality difference that Christie has pointed to within the Constitution.
Councillor Butler, did you? Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Burford. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, this is about the local plan. This is about making sure the local plan can get through whatever happens with the CPO, because we need, and I was here in this room and I asked the local plan inspector who came in to give us advice on what issues we needed to deal with, where she said, you have to prove you have left no stone unturned. And that's what this report's about. It's not about car parks. And I think we should proceed on those lines.
Thank you, Chair. I guess we're sort of still we're in comments, aren't we? And I think we need to move soon to a vote. But I would like to congratulate Paul on this, and it has done exactly what he's explained, and it's amazingly withstood journalism to get sort of the message across in what's been written about it. Eddie Bisnell's really actually summed it up quite well. And nobody comes out of it terribly well. We've struggled to solve this problem. Why? Because it's difficult. You know, some comments have been made, oh, why don't you do X and Y? Well, of course, 8 years went by and X and Y weren't done. It's difficult. it's hugely problematic because it's sort of such an emotive thing. And this is a good report setting where we've got to. It's interesting that two of you in this room actually voted for this site in the 2017 plan. You'll hear again. I hope you will again and support this because we need it. We need a local plan. We desperately need a local plan. This is part of the move towards that, and I do encourage people to support this. The issue of car parks and everything else is another matter. We need a report, if we're going to discuss that, which actually looks at everything. And this doesn't. This is just a chronology of what we've looked at. And there's an awful lot of, we looked at it and it didn't work out. And that's sad, but that's where we are. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Mrs Rains from Tansley, she asked a question about the access to the ARC reports, and some of us went and looked at these ARC reports behind closed doors. We couldn't take them away, we couldn't share them, we've been given strict instructions. But it's given rise to numerous questions about this from us councillors here, which continue, and we still haven't had those answers that we need to have. I would just like to say to those people at Middleton that have come again, you know, I'm really sorry that they are here again. And I think we must have a report. You know, Paul's always saying, oh, it's a member decision, member decision. Well, I think the members are pretty clear that they want Middleton and Matlock back off. I actually wrote earlier this week to the council asking, please confirm the status, timeline and expenditure to date on the pause sites at Middleton and Matlock Bath. So you are not forgotten. There are people asking about you. Anyway, I'm getting back to my sort of like, we're in debate, aren't we now? I just wanted to read some of these questions that I've asked, which were not in that report. And I've seen all those full ARC reports. Please provide the full written appraisal and evidence for the Woodyard site, redacted if necessary, including all cost assumptions, and explain how all these costs can be calculated and how they were. I'd like to see those. That's one thing. Has Derbyshire Dales District Council received a response from Nestle regarding the covenant on the Derbyshire Dales District depot site at Ashbourne? This is another one. You know, we send a few letters or we send a few emails, we don't hear anything, and yet councillors are expected to vote on that. We don't know from the monitor officer that's going whether officers and members are culpable financially or otherwise for making a decision about that. We still don't know about that. There's lots of questions, but I'm only just going to read sort of like a few of them. And I need to ask again, what specific improvements have been made to record keeping on high risk or contentious matters since Hasker Farm? You know, we come here every time, we say it's a member's decision.
Councillor, are you referring to this report?
I am referring to this report. I am referring to this report because not all the information is in there. And once again, we've been asked to go along with advice that I'm not sure we've had that full advice. And no wonder Ashbourne people are disappointed yet again.
Councillor Wayne.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that clarification, Mr Wilson, because I think it is important that we understand what we're actually discussing tonight. This is very, very important. But I do feel for those people from Middleton and Matlock Bath, because at the end of the day, it's not fair on them. Anybody who's got their house up for sale or can't get their house up for sale and is losing this amount of money wants some closure on it. And we may not be able to discuss it tonight, but I would urge officers and leadership to bring a report back where we can put this thing firmly to bed, because I have got grave concerns. Excuse the pun about the one at Middleton, but I've got grave concerns about that site and the one at Matlock Bath. So I think we do need to discuss it, because it's people's lives we're playing with and we shouldn't let them dangle.
Yes, I agree, Councillor Wayne.
Thank you.
Councillor Slack, can we...
Yeah, I totally agree with Councillor Wayne. I mean, these two sites, Matlock Bath and Middleton, have been kicked into long grass 2 or 3 years now. And it's just left there. It's time it was sorted, and it's got to be sorted. You can't just to keep people's lives, as Steve says, people's lives involved here, so we don't want to keep thing going on and on. Wants to bring to another meeting shortly.
But not tonight. We can't do it tonight. So
not tonight, but
Councillor Ripton's
next
also
meeting probably.
He's already asked for a vote on this on these recommendations. Is anyone prepared to second it?
No, I need to come back on.
Still talking.
Chair, I haven't come back in debate yet.
We haven't put him back in debate.
Kicked into the long grass as well.
Do you
We'll
want
have
to
to
go first?
defer.
Do it? Do you want me to go?
Can I come now?
You can go now and then I'll go.
15 minutes.
I don't think we should go. We're talking about Matlock, Bath and Middleton, which we've agreed, bring it back another night. But let's bring it back for all the car parks, not just them two, because it puts pressure on the other areas, like Ashbourne. If it's not brought back en bloc for all the car parks, we shouldn't be looking at it. We should disregard all of them. But
Watery Lane's completely
like we did before. Right, I'm going back to Watery Lane now. Back in 2012, our chief exec was then the planning officer a long time ago, and Sandra Lamb put in for the planning on the depot site then, which was withdrawn, I presume, because of the restraints on the covenant, etc. And now we find ourselves looking at compulsory purchase on the site across the way from the depot, which is not many yards away from the depot, 60, 70 yards probably. But the cemetery, still, we keep referring to Middleton Cemetery. Ashbourne Cemetery is just as important. The existing cemetery has got 300 plots in it, which was due for over a 20-year period, which them plots, depending on how people live and wherever, could run out of space 2032-ish. So there's been another 950 plots adjacent to the cemetery allocated on a 60-year capacity. So this Traveller site that you're proposing to do a compulsory purchase order on is still going to be next to a cemetery, right next to it. Very, very close. Too close. Too close. I know how many sites there is. I live there. That road, the site you're talking about, is one little field from the recycling centre, which when the future development of the cemetery takes place, it becomes next door to it.
But that must have been considered in 2015, 16 and 17 when it was included in local plan and had planning consent.
But it's something we keep saying, Traveller sites should not be near cemeteries, burial grounds, etc. Why is Ashbourne different?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Wayne.
Can I just ask that the question is put, please?
Yeah, well, that's what...
Thank you very much. Just to
I'll still
echo.
have to come back to Paul's point.
Thank you.
So I'm still going to challenge that I can't make an amendment because your rationale, Paul, while I fully understand it, you're saying that the report is framed from only a permanent traveller's point of view in regards to the local plan. But that's not right because you have a whole section on temporary gypsy and traveller site provision. Therefore, you have a whole section in the report about that. Even if you just go recanting the history, the fact that you've put it in the report surely makes it absolutely appropriate for me to bring an additional recommendation linked to that, because if this report was only about permanent sites, you didn't need to put anything in about temporary traveller or gypsy site provision. You should have just left that out. So the fact that it's in the report, I think, is absolutely legitimate that I'm able to raise an additional recommendation against it. And so I'd like further clarification, please.
Chair, if I can interrupt. I think this is very disrespectful. You've received legal advice. I think we owe a duty to our officers to follow that legal advice. The point has been made that the question should be put. If necessary, I'm not quite sure procedurally, but I will second that, and I suggest we move straight to the vote.
Yes, can we vote now?
No, I'm waiting for a response. That's completely inappropriate. Peter doesn't run this meeting, so you're being disrespectful. I've asked a legitimate question. So can I have an answer for it, please? What's the rationale? Why have you included it in the report? And therefore, why am I not allowed to make my own amendment?
Chair, happy to respond, but I'll defer to the Council Solicitor in terms of the constitution issues. But as the joint author of the report, as I said a little earlier, the real purpose of this report was to set out the chronology of activity that the Council's undertaken in order to provide a permanent traveller site moving forward, with a particular focus upon the need to have that traveller site identified in the local plan. However, it would have been remiss and probably somewhat illogical not within the report to also mention the various complex discussions that have taken place over many, many years regarding how we've had to try to deal with this situation in the process of finding a permanent site. So I entirely accept the point that Councillor Whitehead is raising, but it's the context of what this report is trying to achieve that I come back to, insofar as this isn't a report debating how we deal with temporary or permanent traveller site accommodation outside of a local plan context. The context is very much framed upon we need to identify a site, we need to progress a local plan, we will probably not be able to progress that local plan until we include a site, and therefore there are specific courses of action that I'm trying to set out to effectively get us to that position. Entirely acknowledging the concerns that have been raised regarding the temporary sites that Council agreed in December 24. If it's the will of the administration and members to bring that back in a subsequent report, officers can clearly do that. But as I say, as the joint author, it certainly wasn't the intention to try and have a all-encompassing debate upon temporary provision, permanent provision, local plan provision. It was very much about this site and how we move it forward. So the context was more of a chronological story rather than a specific debate around the merits or otherwise of those temporary sites.
My advice again is referring to the Constitution at clause 18.7. Any amendment must be pertinent and relevant to the original motion and shall not have the effect of introducing a material new issue. Quite clearly as...
How is it materially new?
Because the report is not about those sites. It introduces those sites in the chronology.
What's recommendation 6 about them?
Well, again, as a joint author, perhaps I can comment on recommendation 6. That, again, is trying to demonstrate through the evidence base that if there are other sites that do come forward, that it is imperative that the council also investigates them. And the point being that we need to go into a local plan examination in public, demonstrating that we've left no stone unturned. So whilst this particular report is saying that despite all of the efforts that we've made over 13 years to try and identify a site, we come back to the point that the Watery Lane site clearly has a degree of credibility because it's been through an examination once, it's been seen to meet national planning requirements at that time, it's had planning permission. The only reason we're not able to bring it forward now is because we've got resistance from the County Council, which we want to try and overcome. However, it would be a far stronger case for the local planning authority to go into that examination saying, but also, this isn't the only site we've looked at for permanent provision. If there are other sites which we identify between now and that local plan being submitted, we will put them forward as well. Because it comes back to the no stone left unturned piece. We've got to demonstrate every effort. Now, we're not talking about the temporary provision here.
Permanent sites in that recommendation, Paul, unfortunately. Chrissy's just said that the part of the rationale was that I couldn't bring it because we're not allowed to talk about sites. But that sort of directly talks about sites. Doesn't mention permanent.
We've got the legal advice.
I'm asking,
Councillor, so,
I'm querying the legal
because we're
advice.
debating this for the
I'm sure Christy's quite used to having her advice queried. It's part of the job.
All I would say, it's quite clearly been noted that everyone has concerns tonight about the two sites, and I think those comments will be taken away. I don't...
Well, I know, well, I disagree with that because we've raised this again and again, and it just gets kicked and kicked. So we have an opportunity to do it now.
We have 2 of the 3 leaders of the council in the room. I'm sure they will give Nick comfort that this is going to be given attention outside of the room and that they can agree with officers what the next step is. Is that reasonable?
Martin, may I comment?
Briefly.
Absolutely, it has been a concern. Planning blight is something we're absolutely against, but we need to look at it in the round. That's all we are. At the moment, we're working on the local plan.
Yeah. Right. Can we?
That wasn't much of a commitment to bring it back and have a look properly.
Yeah, can we have a recorded vote, please, Chair?
About 20 minutes after Councillor Ripton proposed, we had a vote. We're still wondering what we're going to do, but if it's going to be a recorded vote, then so be it. Right.
And also you've got to vote for a recorded vote and second.
Oh yeah, yes. Are we all in favour of having a recorded vote then?
You propose and second it, yeah.
If it's going to make progress, hopefully, yes. Right. Were they against, were they? No, don't. Oh, Councillor Butcher against. Right. Okay. So we go ahead.
He'll shout the names out.
Yeah, that's right.
So, the recorded vote. Councillor Burfoot.
4.
Councillor Butcher.
4.
Councillor Buttle.
4.
Councillor Dobbs.
4.
Councillor Hobson.
Against.
Councillor Lees.
Against.
Councillor Linthwaite.
4.
Councillor Murphy.
Sorry, against.
Councillor Ripton.
4.
Councillor Slack.
Abstain.
Councillor Wayne.
4.
And Councillor Whitehead.
Abstain.
7 for, 3 against, and 2 abstentions.
7 for, 3 against, and 2 abstentions.
7 for, 3 against. 2
7 for, 3 against, 2 abstentions. Is that clear? Okay. I think that hopefully concludes this very long meeting. Have a safe journey home. It's still just about light, but so we all get home in the light.